These are some of our notable graduates.
I would take the guy in the lower left out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll have to update
Which one was that?
Crenshaw.
I was just thinking that as I was walking back through here. I'm like, I wouldn't be mad if he was removed.
Yeah, there's plenty of other people to put up there.
There's plenty of other. You know what? I think I'm going to replace him with you.
Yes.
Notable graduate. So we were founded by Morton Blackwell. Morton was in the Reagan administration, and there was a real need to train and activate. It started with students, but also adults, because as you'll see in our first presentation, political technology, the ability to communicate, persuade, all of that is politically neutral. So if we're not doing it, the left is doing it, and they're wiping the floor with us. So thank you all for being here so that we can improve our skills together. We are a 501c3, so you'll notice we use words like left and right, or liberal and conservative, and we avoid words like Republican and Democrat because we don't want the IRS coming after us.
Have you ever thought about changing that to a C6? Or having a secondary wing of it?
You know, I know a lot of organizations have these niches where they do all that. I think something that I've found makes us unique is that because we're not in the space of endorsing candidates, we stay strictly in the lane of education. We've been able to go into places where, you're not going to believe this, but some states have infighting inside the
Not in this room.
It's a shock, I know. So we've been able to come in as that kind of very neutral third party and gain a level of respect that we're just here for educational purposes. And we've had people that sit in our classroom together that otherwise would not sit in any other hall together. And I'm very honored and happy about that, and we do want to keep it that way. So thank you so much. I'm going to get started with the first presentation. We do have a full day ahead. So this presentation is about the real nature of politics. I especially enjoy showing this in places where conservatives don't necessarily have a majority. I think it is very helpful for and instructive for candidates and anybody on a campaign on how we can best reach voters. So politics is different from any other study. When you start your career, a lot of times you're going into that field because it's something you're good at. Politics is different. A lot of us are here because we felt called to it, and maybe the skill learning comes later. You know, they say it's political science, but is it really a science? It seems like it's more art and science. A lot of times on a campaign, you'll have lots of data, but so much of it comes down to judgment. And you all knowing your communities and your areas where you live, you know better sometimes than even the data will show about certain issues. On a campaign, you do have to do a lot of planning, but you can't always follow those plans and you need to adapt. So many times on a campaign, you can do everything right and still lose. But other times you can make plenty of mistakes along the way and still win. So today we're here to show you some strategies just to tip the scales a little bit in your favor for victory. So the most important question in politics, does anyone have a guess? What is the most important question?
Listening.
Okay. All right, well, we'll find out. So this was made by our international director, Ron Nearing. So his grandfather was born in 1910 in Germany, and at that time a life expectancy was 47 years old. And then Ron's father was born in 1934 with a life expectancy of 58 years old. Ron was born in 1970 and enjoys a life expectancy of at least 71 years. So what happened during that time? What is it that makes it possible for one generation to live better than the last?
Education. Diet.
Are people smarter? No, definitely not. There's so many times in history where we've had, very intelligent geniuses, our founding fathers, for example, so that is definitely not it. What do we have that they didn't? Well, the answer is innovation. And innovation is made up of two ingredients. So we've got education, but then we have something else, opportunity. You'll find when you go to Cuba, there's a lot of doctors there. There's a lot of highly educated, but that doesn't necessarily equate to prosperity. They don't have that opportunity. So this is a dump truck. 50 years ago, how many people did it take to operate a dump truck?
2.
Yeah, like 3, maybe 4, right? You had the 2 in the back, the driver, and maybe some union guy with a clipboard in the passenger seat. But today, we can do all that, with one person and some innovation.
Is that where government got the idea? To have the clipboard?
I think the unions got the idea from government. I think government's been ineffective for even longer than that.
Well, it's now cheaper, right?
So this is a Radio Shack ad from a newspaper. When we show this to younger groups, it's like, what's Radio Shack and what's a newspaper? So if you add everything up that you needed to operate a successful campaign, your tape recorder, your phone, it all added up to $3,200 back in the day. So today's dollars, maybe that's $8,000. But the truth is, you could do all of that on your iPhone. And we've heard this one before. Your smartphone is millions of times more powerful than the Apollo 11 guidance computers. Oh, wow. Amazing. So one thing we're going to take a look at is the index of economic freedom. So to have economic freedom, there's 4 components: the rule of law, the size of government, regulatory efficiency, and open markets. What does that mean? If I own land, is someone else going to show up and say, you don't own that anymore, I own that? If I need a permit, am I going to have to bribe someone at the government office to go ahead and get that? So here's a map that shows the economic freedom distributed across the world. And we are very blessed to live in the most free and prosperous country on earth. But not everyone else is so lucky. So people who advocate for free market capitalism are often met with some kind of opposition. And when we point to failures of socialism across the world and communism, we're told some of these things are just cultural. But 2 times in history have we taken one culture, shared language, split it in 2 strictly of lines of ideology. So when the wall came down, were people running to East Germany to get the latest cars? No. And we see that very clearly here. This is North and South Korea. So on the other side of the border, what's going on there? Well, talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. So what is it that allows people to prosper? Good schools, property rights, low and fair taxes, trade, sound money, effective courts, the freedom to work, save, invest, create a business, sound government, freedom from corruption. This is a platform everyone can get behind. What's wrong with it?
It becomes politicized, interpretation.
These ideas cannot implement themselves. They need champions. They need you. So that brings us back to the most important question in politics. Why? Why should someone believe you? Why is your idea better? Why is your candidate running for office? And why should I trust you? There's one problem with the why questions, though. They really must be answered before they are asked. Because if you're explaining, you're losing. And at the end of the day, we have some great videos that show this and demonstrate. So just a little bit of history on how campaigns have changed for better or for worse. In 1960, we saw the first use of televised debates. So Nixon treated it like a radio debate that would be on television, but Kennedy treated it like a television debate. So the result was people who listened to it on a radio thought that Nixon won, and people who watched on TV thought that Kennedy won. And at different times we've seen technology have greater and greater influence on our campaigns, including social media and influencers. So pre-World War II, campaigns were very neighborly. And then we moved, after the televised debates, to a little bit more of a distance campaigning. We saw an emphasis on TV ads, media. In the year 2000, when Bush ran for president, they noticed that the more times a voter was contacted, the more likely they were to vote for that candidate. So nationwide, with all of their volunteers and their pollsters, they worked on something where they would track voter contacts. There was a problem with that, though. They were treating a knock on the door the same as a flyer in the mail, the same as a phone call. So what do you think the problem with that is?
Skewed data.
Their effectiveness is different. Yeah, so door to door is very effective. So after they realized that, everyone realized door to door and person to person is more effective. We saw a rise of the AstroTurf campaign. So that is paid canvassers going door to door. I'll tell you a story about one of the problems with that. So if we're talking about a highly motivated, engaged volunteer, someone whose heart is in it and you just happen to be paying them, that's fine. But the problem with the AstroTurf campaigning is sometimes that's not the case. You're taking barely employable people and sending them out to knock on voters' doors. This is a true story, but it's thankfully from a campaign on the left, not on the right. There was a door knocker who knocked on a door, paid canvasser, noticed that it was unlocked and let himself in.
Did the candidate win?
Actually, the candidate totally won. So that kind of brings us full circle. And here's where we are today. We know there's a big advantage to communicating in person. Those personal connections, they build trust, the nonverbal cues, the body language, the way we're able to have that back and forth conversation at the door or somehow in person at an in-person event. And that brings us to today. There is a premium on physical campaigning that is volunteer powered and professionally organized. Professionally organized is because what happens if one volunteer doesn't show up on Super Saturday? It's one precinct that doesn't get walked. But if your organizer doesn't show up, that'll throw off your whole campaign. And digitally supercharged. So taking in all that data and always, ranking the data that your campaign has, micro-targeting with your ads. So physical at the point of contact with the voter, but digitally targeted, tested, organized, tracked, and amplified. So who's welcome from our movement? Well, really anyone, because conservatism is a set of ideas that's open to everyone. So who gets to win? Who decides highly competitive general elections?
The independents.
I'll give you a hint. There's none of them in the room today.
The voter.
Non-political voters. Non-political. So not necessarily nonpartisan, but non-political. My best friend is one of these, right? She's a hairdresser. She does not think about politics, but she'll come out and vote. Maybe not in every election. Maybe it's once every 4 years at the general, but she's a voter. She's a non-political voter. She does not eat and breathe the 24-hour news cycle, and she would never spend a Saturday sitting in a room to learn about politics.
Do you guide her?
Of course. But the other thing that we do, all of us in the political world, we treasure people like that because we run our messaging past them. And this is why. Our why must reach and persuade non-political people. So if you need a political science degree and 3 hours a day of watching Fox News to understand and unpack your why, you're losing. Your why must reach and persuade non-political people. And remember, the why questions must be answered before they're asked. So some people in the room said money wins elections. Well, if that were true, this would be President Michael Bloomberg, most expensive self-funded campaign in history. Didn't even win a state. Jerry Brown and Meg Whitman, 36 million versus 177 million.
That's California, though.
Oh, I know. What about the news media?
What about
The news
right here
media
in Nevada?
decides.
If you look at Nevada, look at last time where Mark Amodei was 570,000 and Greg Kidd was 9 million.
Right there.
There you go.
That's a
Yeah.
great one for Nevada specifically.
That's true. You're so right.
He has spent $28 million over 3 campaigns so far,
Wow.
and he has not won
Anything.
anything. And he's now, this term,
Yep.
will be all 3 parties.
It's because kids just.
Okay.
Shit. My opinion.
Well, obviously, this cycle is very important for many, many reasons. What about the news media? Do they decide who wins? Well, thankfully not, or else we'd have President Hillary Clinton. We know the media was all in for her.
Hitler.
And you know, for people who say the size of the party decides the winner, parties are a very important way to mobilize voters. But in Massachusetts, where there's one lonely Republican for every 3 liberals, still managed to get 2-time Governor Charlie Baker. What about the side with the best ideas? This is something Morton Blackwell talks about because a lot of conservatives, we feel our ideas are right, and therefore people just have to see how right we are, and then they'll understand and win. Why are we spending so much time talking about messaging and all these things? Well, there are people all over the world with terrible ideas still winning. So political movements over time, who wins? The winner of a political contest over time is determined by the number and effectiveness of activists and leaders on each side. Barry Goldwater lost 44 states. Few short number of years later, Reagan won 144 states. What changed? That was the birth of the conservative movement those years in between. We had conservative institutions like Leadership Institute, legislative groups like ALEC, Heritage Foundation, magazines like National Review, they all came to rise during that time. Political technology, how to communicate, how to organize. It's philosophically neutral, can be used by either side. So here's a quote, this might remind you of voters. The problem with market research is that people don't think what they feel, don't say what they think, and don't do what they say. So that brings us to political theory. You know, they like to put us on this tidy left-right scale, but is that really what it looks like? What about a voter who wants lower taxes, but they support mandates on electric vehicles?
Yeah.
Are they a moderate? Yeah. What about a voter who likes a candidate's policies but not her conduct? And what about that voter who just doesn't care about following politics? Well, how did they win? Mayor Kevin Faulconer, Susana Martinez, governor. They won because they understood that we cannot fit voters on a tidy left to right political spectrum. The reality is, if you are a candidate who presents great ideas and solutions, has a compelling narrative or an identity, and has skills needed to communicate with voters, you can win. So we learned about the importance of the why, that good ideas cannot implement themselves. They need champions, they need you. And that conservatism is a set of ideas open to everyone. A winner of a political contest over time is determined by the number and effectiveness of its activists and leaders. and that political technology are the skills to organize and communicate. And finally, that the right idea and a strong narrative and sound skills is the maximum opportunity for victory. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. How are we today? Good. So my name is Holly Horn, and I am the Director of Legislative Leaders Programs for the Leadership Institute. So what I primarily do now is travel around from state to state and work with their conservative elected members to their legislature to help them to better serve their constituents, which in turn helps them to be able to get reelected when the time comes. So actually we are currently working on doing one of these very things in Nevada with your members of your House and Senate. We haven't set a date yet, but it's looking like June, and we are very excited to do that. But before becoming the Legislative Leaders Program Director, I was the Deputy Director for the state of Colorado, then Director for Colorado, then Region 5 Director, which was from Alaska all the way over to Kansas. Large area. But it was a great opportunity to see various states, what's going on within them. And as Stephanie was talking about, there is a lot of division among us conservatives, but there's also a narrative that's being pushed about us out there into society by the news media every single day. So what we can do is learn to practice some good messaging strategies that will assist us in being able to reach those voters that may have already been slightly poisoned or all the way poisoned by the media. Because just like in Colorado where I live, we cannot win elections if we don't have some of those more middle of the road people coming over and voting with us. I don't care if we disagree on 99% of the topics. If that 1% topic gets you to come and vote for my person, fantastic, come on over, we'll take you. I got my start in politics when I was 16 years old. Oh, yes.
You're talking about Colorado. Are you referring to the Blue Book situation in Colorado?
The blueprint?
Blueprint, yeah.
Yes, I read that. I've lived through some of that. I've not been there quite as long as when it started. I'm originally from Kentucky, but I've been in Colorado now for 8.5 years. And so I've seen our steady decline where we're losing a few legislature seats every single cycle. And at the end of the day, I don't want to discourage you all about your candidates you're passionate about and the seats that they're running for, but at the end of the day, the stuff that truly affects our day-to-day lives is happening in those state capitals. That is what's truly changing, and then your local level stuff. And so what I encourage people in Colorado to do is to get involved at the very basic level and chip away at it inch by inch. If we don't really feel that it is a true great use of our resources to fight for some of these higher level seats that we don't have a prayer for, start in those smaller areas. And we actually saw some success with that in 2024 in Colorado, where we picked up 3 House seats after steadily losing them year after year, where we were in a super minority. Now we are out of the super minority, still minority, but working to take those back a little bit at a time and focus on the places and areas where we can actually have a true impact and start seeing positive changes in our day-to-day lives. And so, but anyway, so I managed my first campaign when I was 16 years old. It was for state legislature. My high school government teacher recommended me to come on board as a volunteer to help them until they got a campaign manager. And this was a competitive district in Blacksburg, Virginia, where there was the college, Virginia Tech. And so when you have a college town, it's often going to lead to swing districts or even left-leaning districts. So I managed the campaign, and then I was a volunteer in the campaign. Election night came around. We won. We never had an adult show up to be the campaign manager, so it had been me all along. But I was bitten by the bug. And from then on, I just was passionate about making sure that I was involved in bringing about positive changes for my community. I'm sure you all have your reasons why. I've gone on to manage campaigns from school board all the way up to US Senate in several different states. And I love doing the campaign side, but I've also really enjoyed working with our elected members as well, because I've managed campaigns for people who had a great vision, got elected, and then had no idea how to actually accomplish the stuff once they got there. Or I've had people that I've worked for before that were doing fantastic things out there for the people every single day, but they weren't communicating to tell them all of these great things. So some of these tactics we're going to talk about will help you to communicate about your sitting elected officials and why they should go on to win again. It will help you to look at what they've done and pitch it in a way that more people can get on board with. Because at the end of the day, if the person who is receiving your message at least finds it to be a reasonable message, they may not get on board with you, but they also may not immediately disqualify you in their mind. So getting them on board with that reasonable piece, that reasonable messaging will help you to truly have influence and be persuasive. So first, let's talk about what do we see in this picture over here on the right?
There's two people.
A young girl,
An old lady.
or an old woman. And once you see one, it's kind of hard to go back and see the other sometimes, isn't it? So if you can't see the old woman, there's her nose, mouth, chin, but then you've got the young girl there, eyes, ear. So it just shows we are all conservative people here in this room, but we're looking at the same image, and some of us are seeing one thing, some of us are seeing another. So how can we explain it to where people who see things differently are still going to be on the same side? So what do you think of when you see this? Hippies? The peace sign did that for you, yeah. Somebody, I heard a whisper of liberals. What else?
Gay.
Gay, baby boomers, LGBT. Yep, because this is a rainbow. It might be hard with the tinting on this, but it is the rainbow flag. So some of you saw it as kind of a somewhat neutral thing. Others of you saw it as a negative thing. But what we do know is we have anti-war people among conservatives. We have LGBT people among conservatives. So though this may not resonate with us as an overly positive thing, another person who may vote for the very same person we will may see this as positive. What about this?
Defender.
Defender. What else?
Patriotic.
Patriotic. Yep. Maybe
Historic.
historic. Maybe liberty.
What's that?
Oh, yeah.
Liberty. Yeah.
We don't have
Okay,
liberty.
so would it surprise you to know that there are some conservatives that feel negative feelings when they see this? Maybe it's just fear. Maybe it's a time of uncertainty that they fear. They don't want to ever go back to this. They might still vote for the same person as you, but they might feel differently about this flag. It doesn't mean anyone is wrong. It just means we see it differently. So in this module today, we're going to talk about understanding decision making, the 6 moral foundations that make up our ability to make decisions, and what are some effective messages that we can use while utilizing the moral foundations to our advantage. Oh no, hold on, let me go back. Something happened. Okay. No. Oh. Oh, that's not a video, I guess.
Go back 2 slides.
I was like, it was.
There you go. Try that, hover over the black laptop.
There we go.
Ah.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
I'm a PC.
Ready to get started?
Well, not quite. Got a lot to do. What's your big plan?
I might make a little movie or maybe create a website, try out my built-in camera. I can do it all right out of the box, so what about you?
Well, first I gotta download those new drivers, and I gotta erase the trial software that came on my hard drive.
Sweet.
And I've got a lot of manuals to read.
You know, it sounds like you have a lot of stuff to do before you do any stuff, so I'm just gonna get started because I'm kind of excited. Let me know when you're ready.
Actually, the rest of me's in some other boxes, so I'll meet up with you later.
Okay, so this was a commercial that had nothing to do with politics, but I'm going to ask you to think about which of these guys is the conservative and which one is the liberal.
Mac,
Mac is what?
conservative.
Conservative. Okay, pause and hold that thought, and I'm going to come back and ask you why. Anybody have a differing opinion?
Which one's Mac?
The Mac's on the right, the PC's on the left.
Okay, good. So you think Mac's conservative?
It's an image that we have that the conservative is the guy in the suit.
Right.
And
Yep.
the liberal is the younger guy.
Yep, our intuition tells us that the conservative is the guy in the suit. Now, why did you think that the Mac was the most conservative?
Because we're ready to do stuff and we're not having to be put together to actually get shit done.
Exactly, and that was my first thought on this. But in most rooms, we're among the minority. Typically, it's based on intuition. We were tapping into that reasoned part of our mind. Not everyone does, though. A lot of people run their whole lives based on intuition, what that gut feeling is. People of faith, right, may even run their whole lives based on what they think God wants them to do. God may want them to do it, but they may not. How many people have you seen come in and say, God told me to run for president? Right? Are they hearing God really? I'm not sure. And I'm a person of faith. Don't get me wrong. I listen for God's voice to tell me things all the time, right? But some of us run based on that split judgment, that intuition, that feeling we get, and others more of the reasoned side, the rational side of the brain. And we're going to talk about just that. So our intuition is more automatic. We base this a lot off of first impressions, which is why if you're running for office or you find yourselves representing someone who runs for office at events and things, your first impression is so important. People will sometimes vote for a candidate based on the way they look or their last name, and they like the way it sounds. That's it. So for those people, you still need those votes. So putting your best foot forward, so you're not judged based on the first impression, is great, because intuition's judging and it causes people to make a split-second decision. But then you have the reasoned side of the brain. This is not automatic. This is where you're listening for what the words are telling you or reading more into it rather than making that decision just based on looks. Your reason is going to be persuading. Sometimes you have to be persuaded into making that decision based on reading or reasoning, and it's conscious. You are making a conscious decision. It's not just something that snaps into your brain. And this brings us to talk about the elephant and the rider. So the rider represents, and this is from Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind. I definitely recommend it if you haven't read it yet. The first part is a little tough to pound through, but once you get through the beginning, it's a really great and easy read. But the rider has the rational mind. The elephant has the impulsive mind. The elephant is going to go wherever it wants to go, wherever its feeling tells them to go, unless the rider reasons with them, meaning giving them those commands of what they need to do. It's not based on impulse. And then a lot of times the environment will affect the outcome, the path, and the effort, the will to actually pull people over the finish line with you, reasoning with them to drag them across. So to do this, you're going to start with the elephant on your side. So this means we are not going to knock on doors and say, my candidate is 100% pro-life without any exceptions the moment the person opens the door and you say hello. Because you're not starting with the elephant on your side. That is not what we call 80-20 issues. Are we familiar with what that is? 80% of people are in full agreement, 20% of people not so much. So those are typically those safe issues that you're going to hear candidates talking about a lot, because it's something that doesn't turn them off to people that aren't fully aligned with them. But you might start off and talk about some issues that are local to you first before getting into the nuances of abortion. Your candidate can be 100% pro-life, no exceptions, but we don't need to start the conversation with that piece. We have limited bandwidth to explain or persuade people. Attention spans are short, especially in the modern day of social media, where we have 30,000 messages just slamming us in the face every single day as regular human beings. Not necessarily people who work on social media are constantly there, just regular people. So in order to keep their attention and grab it, you need to keep it short, sweet, to the point, and not start with something where you're automatically going to disagree because they've already closed themselves off to you, even if you go on to have an hour-long conversation. You lost them in the first minute. I'll give you a quick example of this. So when I ran a campaign for town council, and a lot of people, especially those who were hyper involved politically, aka political nerds, aka probably some of us in this room, right? When those people would try to weigh in on the campaign and what we should be talking about, a lot of times they wanted to bring the statewide or the national narrative into the conversation. However, we won that entire campaign based on talking about a stop sign. We didn't need to bring those things that we disagreed about onto the table for discussion. For regular people, that stop sign that was a dangerous intersection was enough to get their vote. So keep it simple, local, connected to what regular old people, not people like us, regular old people are going to connect with, and that is where you start. That's the elephant on your side. Any 80-20 issues in your community, in your state, that's where you start.
So did they get the stop sign?
They got the stop sign and he won, you know? He won so he could get the stop sign.
400 stop signs and make sure that it clogged everything.
I'm personally a fan of a roundabout, and that's an extra controversial thing. Okay, so you want to ask yourself, what kind of signals are you, and even if you are championship level door knocker, that is your contribution to every campaign. What signals are you sending to trigger people's intuitive judgments? It probably would be better to go knocking doors in a t-shirt that reflects your local county party than to door knock in a t-shirt that says F Biden.
Yes.
Which I saw a lot of people doing during presidential election time, right? So what kind of cues are you sending them with those visual signals, behavioral signals, affiliations, allies, and adversaries? So it's also important to think about who your candidate, or if you're the candidate, who are you guilty by association with? Because sometimes that causes people to make snap judgments as well. Who are you endorsed by? I am not a huge fan of political endorsements. And as a campaign manager and consultant, you would think I am. But every single endorsement comes with all kinds of baggage. All kinds. So you run the risk of turning off half of your people because half the people don't like that person. So same thing. That would be something that could cause people to make that instinct, intuitive judgment instead of listening to you and your reasoning as to why you're the best candidate for the job. So the audience judgment making model is this, and we have another one that is more imagery, a version of this, that shows the intuitive versus the persuasive, the reasoned pathway. Intuitive pathway tells me that and this started as a child and going all the way through adulthood, that I should order French fries with my meal because they're delicious, right? I want them, especially dipped in ketchup and mayo. I like to do a little combo there. It's a dream. But as I've gotten older, the reasoned pathway tells me I should probably opt for the kale salad. Because it may not taste quite as yummy, but I'm going to feel better later. I won't feel as sluggish and sometimes your mouth gets coated feeling with grease, and I will feel better if I have that fresh kale salad. It might not feel that way in the beginning, but that reasoned pathway tells me that is a better choice than the greasy French fries. So initially, I want to reject the idea of the kale salad. No, definitely none. But then the reasoning brings me back here. So if you can start by winning people over based on their intuition alone, fantastic. But if you haven't won them over by that, you have to think about what's going to get them from that initial rejection all the way over to acceptance. AKA voting your way. Oh, look, here we go. That's the image I was just talking about. Right there, kale salad. So, you have to also remember, though, that angry elephants can't reason. The moment you've turned them off, the reason pathway is cut off. Because they're upset and they're just going to plow through everything. So, the gentle, soft, velvet glove approach, a little bit of finesse with people. You are warm, inviting, and accepting. And I would plead with you to actually be that. When they show up later, don't let them see you cussing somebody at the county party executive committee meeting. Right? Like, actually try to be that to keep them involved and keep them wanting to come back. Angry elephants cannot reason. So if you are at the door and somebody says, you know, I'm for abortion up to 16 weeks, it's not the place for you to then say, baby murderer, the blood's on your hands. No, it's better to say, well, you know, I feel like that's more harm reduction than what some of the left wants to do with due date. So come on over here with us. It doesn't mean we're necessarily voting for a candidate that's that, if that's our number one conviction. You're talking getting people on your side to vote for your person. Right? So, hey, that's better than what the left's doing, am I right? They're extreme on this, right? Yes. So let's chat a little bit about the 6 moral foundations. These are inherently found in every human being. And Jonathan Haidt traveled the world doing research on humans and our nature and our morals. And across all of his travels, he found these moral foundations are consistent among us. So first, let's talk about caring. Caring is for the needs and suffering of others. That is what makes us feel caring. And we despise those who are cruel. Fairness from exploitation. Equal rights versus justice. And it allows us to be in groups without becoming a victim. This is what says, if you see somebody in the schoolyard getting bullied, you and your buddies are going to go over and handle the business and protect that person who's being bullied, because it's not fair if they've done nothing wrong for people to pick on them. We all have that within us. And let's go back to caring real quick for a second. This is why you hear, all of you have seen the commercial, especially late at night, Sarah McLachlan singing In the Arms of the Angels with the sad puppy on the screen. Yeah. This is to get us to care, for us to intuitively care. We don't even have to reason. We see that sad puppy with those eyes and it's over. We care. So let's talk a little bit about sanctity. Places, symbols, and conduct are elevated or avoided. Meaning, if I invite you to come to a program at my church with me and you are an atheist, you aren't going to go in and start pulling everybody there aside talking about why God's not real. You're going to be respectful that my faith is sacred to me, attend the program, be nice, and leave, right? Because that sanctity is something that is held within us as one of the top priorities. Your relationship maybe with your parents, your mother or your father. Maybe you had bad ones, but for most people it is a very sacred relationship, and when you lose them, it hurts you like no other. Authority. So who do we think is more in favor of authority, conservatives or liberals? Conservatives. We're thought of as the people party of law and order, right? Respect our law enforcement officials. But during COVID, those liberals sure loved authority. Make sure you're double masked, hazmat suited, ready to go out for the day to protect others. Not about yourself, protecting others. So they pulled those strings of caring, fairness. It's not fair to put elderly people at risk by not masking up, not staying home to stop the spread for 2 weeks, 20 weeks, 200 weeks, right? Stay at home to slow the spread. But authority does allow us to form and operate in social hierarchies. We do all value it, just in different ways. Loyalty prevents betrayal, allows us to form groups and organizations. This is a lot of times probably why we get extra fired up in those party meetings, right? Because a lot of these people we've been in the trenches with before, fighting to accomplish something. And then next thing you know, you're at each other's throats and it feels like a real betrayal. Oh my gosh, I could make a list of folks in my own county, right? That I've done great things with, and then we split. We split at some point. And so that hurts, and it makes you even more angry because of that sense of betrayal you may feel. It's hard to get past that and look at, well, we're still for the common good. We're all gonna be there for the common good, but you don't understand. Timmy Two-Time was terrible at the meeting last week. He is the worst. He supported this candidate. Can you believe it? That's why we get there, because you're like, I thought you were like me, but I guess you're not. And then liberty. Liberty from oppression, people versus tyrannical institutions. So liberals want more freedom from big corporations, from the man. Conservatives want that liberty from big government. We want to be able to live our lives without the government being overly involved. And this also drives us to unite, to restrain, or expel a bully. People should be free to live without being harmed. So let's give you a few examples of these moral foundations in movies.
You could have only one parent. I wish you could have had your mom, because she would have been better at it. And mommy was the best. Go to sleep, Maddie. Maddie, go to sleep. Maddie, go to sleep. Go to sleep, Maddie. It's not working. She's not a clapper.
I think you should move back to Minnesota. You're all alone here. She needs family. Raising a child is non-stop all day, all night up there.
You look great. Don't say it just to be saying it. You look like a king. King of the sling.
How does it look?
I think it's a new look. I think it's a new hairstyle that can catch on if given a chance.
Mr. Logan, Madeline doesn't have a mother to know laughter.
I am well aware of what my daughter doesn't have.
You think you can do this, but you can't.
No, man, you're right. I can't do it. But you know what? I'm going to do it because I'm a father. God, Maddie. Thank God today I got there in time to hold her hand. With Liz, I didn't get to hold her hand. She was gone.
It's always just us. Other people have more people.
I just want to do what your mom would have wanted me to do.
You know, trying to make everything perfect. You know, we don't have it in control.
Wherever you are, I want to go there.
Wherever you are, I want to go here too.
Somebody's cutting onions or something close to us.
Not usually, but that's okay. We've got it. We've heard enough. Okay, so in watching this, which of these moral foundations that we just discussed did you see present? And there really are no wrong answers, so just say it. Caring, right, absolutely. He cared for his child, his family, his friends and family rallied around him and cared, tried to help him. Yes, another. Loyalty to the sense of family, loyalty to his late wife, right? Any others? Authority, absolutely. He had the authority over his family. He wasn't going to let his parents make them come and move there. We could make an argument for all of these, but this was just some real life examples of ways that you could utilize the moral foundations in your messaging. So let's talk about applying these principles in the real world. This is likely my favorite slide we have at LI because it gives us a really good visual representation of these moral foundations on a scale. So on the far left here, just as in real life, we have very liberal. On the far right, you have very conservative. So very liberal people, authority, sanctity, loyalty, doesn't really register for them. It's not that high up on the scale. However, caring and fairness is through the roof. How many times have we heard bleeding-hearted liberal? Through the roof. However, let's go over here to very conservative now. And you have caring and fairness is pretty high up there still. It's important to us, Authority, sanctity, and loyalty are just a little bit higher, but who do we need to reach?
The moderates.
These people right in here, and it's still way high for them. Authority, sanctity, and loyalty are lower. So, what does this representation tell us? That safe bet messaging from very liberal all the way to very conservative is going to be messaging that has been intentionally filled with caring and fairness. It resonates with all people. And so, anytime you're going to share a message, you need to make sure that that caring and fairness piece is included. I will give you a quick example. In 2021, I managed a school board race. It was actually my own county. It's a 7-member school board. 4 of the seats were up for election, so it was to take the majority. All liberal, super liberal. And it was fully exposed during the COVID years, right? This is 2021 when people are fired up about what's going on in our schools. And so at the time, our superintendent desperately wanted to keep kids in mass. And this is September of 21. COVID was March of 2020. So we're talking a year and a half of these shenanigans, this tomfoolery happening. So our county health department did some really cool things, I'm not going to get into it right now, that allowed us to get ourselves away from 2 liberal counties so we could make our own decisions. Now, the last time during the school board race, we lost all 4 seats by 10 points. So we had a lot of ground to cover. And our superintendent, when the health department said we could not enforce mask mandates on our kids, or anywhere for that example, for that matter, the superintendent sued the health department to make our kids go back in mass. So they were without them for a day. And then they had to go back. And parents were posting videos of their kids crying because they were devastated. They got 1 day without a mask at school. And it was really, really heart-wrenching. And so my candidates needed to say something. But I had the politicos, the talking heads, the hyper-involved, the paid people all whispering in my ear saying, masks are polling horribly for conservatives. You cannot have your candidates say anything about the masks. They have to avoid it. And I'm like, if we don't say something, we're going to seem tone deaf. I mean, we're running for the school board. The superintendent sued the health department. We have to say something. And then I had some of my more freedom-loving, far-right conservative friends saying, they need to stand up and say, rip those masks off the kids' faces.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I mean, they would love to. But is that going to appeal to the moral foundations of people? Sure, liberty-loving conservatives, yep, it'll check a box with them. But is that the most caring and fair message to all that's going to get everyone on board? And so I prayed about it, thought about it a lot. We know that the highest turnout for votes among any demographic is 55 and above. But we also know older people had all lost somebody they knew to COVID because they were more susceptible than younger people. And so how am I going to say something that's not going to turn off the highest turnout voters? Here's what we said. Parents know what's best for their own children's health.
That's right.
We didn't have to take a position on the masks. And we know people ages 55 and up believe parents are in charge of their own children, not property of the state, not property of the school district. So by saying that, we never turned half the people off. The far extreme to the left we did, but we were never going to get them anyway. So we only turned off people that we could never get their votes by saying that. That was safe messaging and thinking about caring and fairness. There was nothing uncaring or unfair about saying parents should make these choices for their kids. And guess what? We raised $500,000 with that messaging for a school board race. Guess what else? We won all 4 seats by 12 points. We flipped it 22 points from one cycle to the next because we practiced good messaging. We were disciplined in our message and it was caring and fair. Yes?
How do you come to that conclusion that this was the right messaging?
Oh, it's hard. I'll tell you the way I do it. I look at every potential demographic that I'm considering among my voters, okay? So left, right, old, young, financial, right, social class, etc. I consider all of that and I run my message as though I'm talking directly to them. Okay, what are they gonna say about this? Next group, what are they gonna say about this? And then after I think about that, I look at my message and say, how can I tweak this just a bit where most people are gonna get on board? But I'm comms director for my state party right now. Every single thing that we put out, I think about how is each demographic going to respond. And it's just a checklist. And after you've been doing it for a long time, you just quickly, this one's gonna hate it, love it, hate it, love it, hate it, love it, worth the risk. Not worth the risk. Or half will hate it, half will love it, so how can we say it in a more caring and fair way? I'm gonna give you one more example. The boys and girls sports issue, okay? So we could say, we must keep the trans out of our girls' sports.
No.
Right? Or we could say, we must protect our young girls in their sports and spaces. Which is the more caring and fair message?
Last one.
Exactly, and it's that simple. So then I think, how would the far right think about that? And they're probably gonna wish we would have been a little stronger on it, but they also don't disagree with this statement. So run it through your checklist like that. Say it in the most caring and fair way you possibly can every single time, and then you're gonna have a lot more favor with those moderate voters that you need to swing over and vote with you. Here's an example of 2 messages. I wanna tell you to tell me which one would resonate with more people.
From my cold, dead hands.
Yeah, we loved it. We loved it. Checks all of our boxes, right? We're in. Oh yeah, and one thing that I want to say here too, we can be tempted to do this. Or we can be more disciplined in our messaging because the school board candidates that I was telling you about, had they taken different messaging, they would have lost. By practicing smart messaging, guess what they did get to do?
They won.
Rip those masks off the kids' faces. The very first board meeting that they were all in power.
Correct.
So by resisting the temptation to say it all the way through, they were actually able to go in and do it. You cannot practice good governance if you cannot get elected. And let's cut some of our candidates some slack when it's crystal clear they are trying to practice good messaging and not drag them out on the carpet in front of everyone and make them say something they don't want to say. Like in 2022 in Colorado, we would have a lot of our party people calling people out on the carpet. Yes or no answer, was the 2020 election stolen? Well, guess what? We lose Colorado the moment we say yes. It's over. All of our candidates have lost. So don't try to pigeonhole them or back them into a corner and make them answer stuff that's going to make them have bad messaging or cost them the election.
Yep.
We have to consider that too as supporters. Okay, so example number 1. Number 2. Play. Oh, it is.
She'll call 911. Average response time, 11 minutes. Too late. She keeps a firearm in this safe for protection. But Hillary Clinton could take away her right to self-defense. And with Supreme Court justices, Hillary can. Don't let Hillary leave you protected with nothing but a phone. The NRA Political Guide is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Okay, so at its root, same message, gun rights, 2A. But which message is going to resonate with more people? Yeah, and women and men.
Yes.
Because the men who are married think about their wife being home alone without a way to protect herself, right? So you're checking all the boxes with more smart messaging, not standing on your soapbox to shout it out. So liberals use cohesive messaging based on moral foundations to great effect. Conservatives can too. Let's think about the SAVE Act. Their messaging. Oh, women aren't going to be able to, married women aren't going to be able to vote. That's how they're trying to get us to think it's not fair and to care about the fairness, right?
How does that work? Keep thinking that's not fair. It's insulting. It's degrading.
It is, 100%.
So
For
where
people with
who thinks
common
it's not
sense.
fair? Because you're so insulted if it's not fair, right?
And the very people
exactly
who
why
are
they're messaging
supposed to
that.
be feminists and for women's rights think we're not smart enough to go down and get our documents changed. Same thing with other races, right? They say that voter ID suppresses the black vote. Are you kidding me? No, women and black people are smart enough to go and get their documents changed, right? But they're using that message. It's not fair. It's not fair to these marginalized minorities. The women. Exactly, right. But that's not the way everybody sees it. Well, if there's a chance that even 1 or 2 votes are suppressed, then we're gonna have to not pass the SAVE Act, no voter ID.
I don't know that their message is working.
It
Everything seems to be saying we want the SAVE Act.
Because really and truly, the SAVE Act is an 80-20 issue, in my opinion. Most Americans do believe it. So they're working overtime to make us believe it's not fair. And they will keep doing it as long as they can. And then once it passes, they'll scream it wasn't fair, and then we'll be back to business.
But they've outspent us 4-1 too.
Yep, that's right.
There is likelihood that it will not, because all the senators have just gone on Easter vacation so they can plant their flowers at home, and they're not coming back till April 13th.
Yep. As a person who flies about on average twice a week, I can tell you I'm pissed. Okay? Yeah, everywhere I go I have to worry, am I even going to be able to get to my gate before the flight leaves?
My question is, where's the conservative counter to that? Why aren't we seeing, that being
What's our
exposed
message?
and
Because we play by the
so
rules.
that it silences that nonsense.
I mean, I feel like it truly is, but as the gentleman in the back pointed, they're outspending us 4-1, so it seems like their voice is louder right now. But we have common sense on our side. That intuition says we don't even need the reasoning. You should have to have your ID in order to vote, right?
But it's not, at this point, I don't even think it's the people that we need to convince, it's the senators.
Yeah, my question is, what else is in the bill that is why they're holding out so much? Because I think that's part of it, but what else is it? And that's where we're gonna get to it, is in those little things. Because they've held out, Nancy Pelosi held something out over some community center in San Francisco for a long time, and they made a lot of concessions for her to get that, while we were all waiting for like the government to reopen or something. I can't remember the exact specifics, but I remember it being all over a community center. Hundreds of millions of people's lives were being negatively impacted for one community center in her district. But a lot of times, that is the only way some people can get things done for their district. And if you're powerful enough, you can. But if you're in the minority at the time, then you're gonna have to figure out ways to wheel and deal to get what you want. Sure, I'll vote, but you've gotta promise me this community center.
The problem is that the bill's 30 pages long and there's too many one-offs like you're talking about.
That's right.
And it's pissing people off all the way across the board, Republican and Democrat.
Yeah.
I was sitting in DC last month and it's exactly that. It's, well, I don't agree with this. You agree with 95% of that bill, but you don't agree with that single thing. There's a problem. And that's what's holding the bill up. And
well, we do it all the time though. Think about it.
Yeah.
You're not 100% pro-life, so I can't vote for you.
Yep.
You don't believe the 2020 election was stolen, so I can't vote for you, right? All sides do it. And it's terrible. It's infuriating, especially when it's impacting our lives. They're talking about potentially closing your airport for a little while. Reno.
Yep.
I was just reading about it yesterday. Until this is solved, some of the smaller regional airports are going to get shut down.
Back
So
to
we'll
the
see.
messaging.
Yes.
So is it effective to counter saying, well, after all, I need an ID to get on an airplane. I need an ID to cash a check. I need an ID to get into this concert. Why not? Is that effective?
Yeah,
as a counter?
absolutely. Or to say, there's almost nothing we can do in our day-to-day lives. These people can do in their day-to-day lives without an ID. Everything. Every single thing. A lot of places just even use your credit card. You have to have an ID. To get the credit card, you have to have an ID or a social security number, right? Yes.
The future of New York belongs to our children.
I want to be a teacher. I want to be a chemist. I want to be a surgeon.
That's why we've invested more in our schools than ever before.
I want to be an artist, a doctor, architect, engineer.
Thousands of new teachers, more computers, and after-school programs.
I want to be. I want to be.
In New York, you can be anything.
I want to be governor.
Me too.
Prouder, stronger, better.
Who remembers Pataki? State of New York. Elected governor, Republican, 3 times. And it wasn't really that long ago. I mean, New York has been liberal for a long time. How did he do it? Messages just like that. Everybody's important. Everybody should have a fair shake at life. Schools should be available to people to learn in the way that suits them best. Prouder, better, stronger.
Lombardi just put a similar ad out.
Yep. There you go.
On education.
That's the type of stuff, because there are voters that may have no other exposure to your campaign but seeing this one ad, and it's enough for them. They got a few grandkids that are getting ready to start into the school system. They want to make sure prouder, better, stronger schools, smarter children, happier children. That's what that message gave us. We didn't need to bring the stuff that will make the elephants angry into it. Happy elephants over good schools, right? Okay, so just some examples. More teachers, better classrooms, after-school programs, children better prepared for the future. Those are all caring messages. Those were all found within that ad. Invest in kids. Children in tough neighborhoods get a better shot. Fairness. That's that fairness piece people were looking for. Not necessarily equity, but equal opportunities for all. Not equal outcomes. That's a message of fairness right there. So how you say it matters. This is a fantastic representation of that.
I wrote a saying, but in different words.
That's all right.
Oh.
Okay, so in that, I'm blind, please help. Well, that's a message that may make some people care. But the second message, it's a beautiful day and I can't see it, makes people relate. They try to feel exactly what you're feeling just based on that statement alone. They find themselves just imagining for a split second of what it would be like in your shoes. And that is going to make even more people care. It's not fair that this person is blind, so I need to take action. I need to do something. Caring and fairness invites people to be motivated enough to take action because they care. And even if it is just as simple as their action piece is, they vote. They may not get involved to, lead a revolution and be the next major name in the conservative movement. Maybe it is as simple as a vote. But maybe because of that vote, the next major name in the conservative movement is taught in a great school and living in a community that's thriving. And then they can go on to do big things. So, do we have any questions about this messaging piece? Yes?
I've been talking about messaging for decades because conservatives typically don't have a clue about how to message. Do we care about the homeless? Do we care about the poor? Yes. Do we have programs that have helped them more than what the left has done? Yes. We just have not been able to frame that in a good way. We have question 6. is coming up on our ballot, which is called the abortion bill.
Okay.
It has way less to do about abortion than it does about getting rid of parental rights, promoting pedophilia and sex trafficking, and underage girls getting forced to have abortions, and the abortion pill, and that almost anybody who has a license with HHS can perform an abortion in an unsafe, space. Where do we find help from, like an organization like you guys have, to start framing those messages to help us beat this? Because although it only won by 28 points, which is a lot, because it was the way our system works, by the time you get petitions and approved and then written and on a ballot, it gives you literally 60 days maybe to start messaging, right? And so they won because of the message, and they'd already had a head start. Now we've been working on for 2 years to mobilize everybody, but I think our messaging could stand some serious upgrades.
For me personally, because you mentioned a lot of pretty egregious things in your list of things that are covered in this question, I would think about, and in everything, anytime you all are going to give a message at all, think about that. For me, I have one neighbor that is conservative but doesn't really pay that much attention to things going on, who is unaffiliated. Then I have another neighbor who is more middle of the road and halfway pays attention. And I always think about how they would respond to any message that I'm going to put out there. Just people who are not your standard people that would be at any county party function or event or something like that. I would get some of those people together and ask them this similar type of question, and ask them what is the most egregious thing to them that is coming up on that question, and then I would hammer home on that one thing again and again and again. That's what the left does, right? Women and immigrants, legal immigrants, etc., will not be able to vote if we pass the SAVE Act. One message that's caring and fair. How can you say it in a way that's caring and fair? This group of people, even if you can find marginalized people, even better, this group of people will be harmed by saying yes to this question. And hammer it home. Don't stop with that one message. And I would recommend assembling, this is not necessarily a part of this presentation, but I would recommend assembling a social media warriors team for any effort that you're working on. Try to get it 40, 50 people big, where the people who are kind of in charge of the messaging can go in there and drop things in this chat that you're gonna create, and people know exactly what their marching orders are. We're supposed to say this as many times as humanly possible in this exact way. And that will help to spread that consistent messaging. Also, utilizing social media, coming up with a hashtag that is about that most egregious thing that people can share along with it, will direct more people to find more information. But if people see a problem as like a singular thing, they're more motivated to act than if they say, oh, we've got 15 problems with this question. You would think by all the bad things, people would feel more overwhelmed by the bad and it would make them act. They just need to care about that one piece. Otherwise, they're like, could it possibly be that bad? And they would still put it on the ballot, right? Then they're not trusting. So one thing, yep, that'll work. Okay, yes.
It seems like many times candidates aren't willing to listen to this type, that they have their own message. I've done this before. I've been a candidate. I've been already in the legislature. I know I can win this way. How do you change that thought process?
Trust me. We talk about this all the time because I train sitting members of the legislature. She does too with me. Usually like the first 3 hours, it's real prickly. There's a lot of tension in the room. But after yes, go ahead.
I mean, honestly, we have to hold the trainings for legislators as resorts, or else they won't come.
Yes, we really nice, fancy.
They're not excited students, you know.
But after a few hours,
Not
you
your
kind of
legislators,
win
I'm sure
them
they're
over.
No, they're not. They're terrible.
Here's another thing. Well,
Yeah,
maybe the Legislative Leaders Program will help them to improve.
No, it
I don't
won't.
know much about them, so I don't know them individually at all. But
She doesn't understand the cabal.
hold on one second. The rug came out from under my brain. You know what I'm talking about? Tell me what you asked one more time.
About how to change the
Get them. Got it. Sorry, it came back to me. Okay, so what I would do, and it may not work, but sometimes we have to do things in spite of people, even if it's the campaign. But it's like, well, they're the only conservative running, so I've got insert party name, right? The only conservative running, so I have to make sure I'm still supporting them, even though I may think they're lacking in some way. So you get your group together and you do something in spite of them. That does help them, but it's like, they don't really get this. Now, I don't recommend that always. You should always try to stick with what the campaign's messaging is, because typically they do know best. Typically, they have a professional working, you would hope, on their team that does understand good messaging. But here's what I would do. I would say, I took a messaging class, and this is what I learned, and I think this message would really resonate with your voters. Send it to them. Because if you say things in a more caring and caring and fair way, it will help. You can even give them the example about the boys and girls sports. That's a short, sweet, to the point one that you can give them. And so I love your stance on this, but you may win more people over if you say it this way. They're going to accept it or not, and then that's up to them. And they hopefully do have a paid professional that maybe if they disagree, they have another alternative theory that has worked for them. But you're not really going to be in control of that unless you want to come to the Campaign Leadership College in Arlington with the Leadership Institute, and then go out and manage campaigns yourself. So then you have better messaging among your candidates in Reno or Nevada as a whole. You're welcome. But they're not always going to listen. And campaign managers and consultants, just like the candidates, are often people with an ego in some way. It might not be like based on appearance or whatever, but we a lot of times like to be the smartest person in every room, or at least think we are, you know? And so that's a problem too. So they may not take your suggestions, but if they are a person that truly wants to collaborate with the community in getting their candidate elected, they should take the time to read it and see you're making some good sense. So, any other questions? All right, fantastic. I'll be back up with you all in a little bit, but I'm also going to put some of my business cards right here on the end of this table. If anybody would like to take one, happy to stay connected, and thank you for your time.
All right, well, that means I am the only thing standing between you and lunch.
Yeah, but this is
in the bathroom.
The elephant might move you.
So this presentation is fairly new, but it's very important because something we see on the left is they are really using vocabulary and rhetoric as part of their strategy. So we need to unpack and understand that so we can disarm that rhetoric. Unhoused.
Stupid. Homeless.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if this will play.
Drug user.
You know, a lot of people now say homeless or unhoused or houseless or people experiencing homelessness. What term do you use?
I use homelessness. Just because everybody else, I don't know why I put it. It's not a homeless. You're in the jungle. It's a jungle. It is a real jungle. People are losing their lives by it. Yeah.
You're here living in your RV. Do you prefer the term homeless, unhoused, houseless, or people experiencing homelessness?
Homeless.
You use the term homeless?
Yeah.
Which do you prefer? Homeless, unhoused, houseless, or people experiencing
houseless.
Houseless.
I think houseless.
Yeah?
Houseless fits. I don't have a house. Yes.
Addie.
Yes.
You're homeless.
I am.
What term do you prefer? Homeless, unhoused, houseless, people experiencing homelessness, and now I think I have to add domestic refugee.
Am I allowed to curse?
Sure.
Because fuck saying people who live with lived experience. I hate that saying with a fiery passion. Because experiences are like good things. You want to tell somebody who is battling cancer that they're experiencing cancer. I prefer homeless, but it is up to other people what they want to say. But for me, it's, yeah, I'm homeless. You know,
So you're hearing it from the population themselves. They don't identify with that term unhoused. It's the same we'll see on a future slide talking about addicts and addiction. A lot of recovering addicts refer to themselves as recovering addicts. So to call them something else is very misplaced. But why is the left doing this? Unless you frame yourself, others will frame you. The media, your enemies, your competitors, your well-meaning friends. The left is doing this because they are all about victimhood. They want to make themselves the victim. They want to make anybody who should be taking accountability for something instead the victim. So increasingly, the left uses language manipulation as a strategic tool. Shift the public policy debate away from the individual and shift it towards state responsibility. So that's really what these language changes are about. It justifies expanded government control, promotes dependency-based policies, and erodes civic virtues like accountability, self-reliance, and we'll see more examples of these types of terms. So the left changing terminology is all about reframing reality, which is why we have to fight it so hard. We cannot let them take our reality from us. Words are carefully chosen to soften consequences, remove moral implications, reassign responsibility away from individuals, and instead assign it to society or to the state. All right, how do they do it? Defining the vocabulary. Here are some fun, not so fun. So we went through homeless, ex-convict, justice-impacted person.
Isn't that just a convict?
Riots. You remember when we had the riots a few years ago? Protests.
Peaceful.
Peaceful, mostly peaceful protests.
Let's burn the courthouse down. Good God, help these people.
Criminal. System-involved individual.
That's criminal justice reform rewording at its finest.
Yep. Drug addict. Substance use disorder patient. So looking at that one for homeless where they said unhoused, the purpose of the reframe, it shifts the focus to the lack of housing, not choices or behaviors. And this is really important for states where the leftists have a majority, because oftentimes they are pushing housing first agendas, housing first policies. I remember when I was a staffer in the California state legislature, we were fighting very hard against that, because there's so many churches and great programs that they bring you in and they make sure to give you what you need, but in exchange, you need to be on the right track. You need to be clean, you need to be sober. And the left was very against that. They pushed housing first with no accountability. And the result was there were entire banks of motels bought out for this purpose. They were destructive. They were destructive. The people who lived there were destructive to that property because there was never any accountability or any exchange, any transaction going on. So again, all coming down to the language, taking that accountability away. Fiery but mostly peaceful protests. This one's new to me. I'm still trying to figure out what's a video, what's not. Stopping the deportations because of illegal immigrants.
Their new one of no one's trespassing on stolen land.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, that is a perfect example of that reframe. Okay, so again, we have the victim narrative framing. Individuals reframed as victims of systems, shifts the blame from personal decisions and instead to societal failure. So it invites state intervention as the rescuer. Oh, I know. Structural injustice framing. Problems are portrayed as systematic. Again, systematic racism, economic injustice, and therefore require structural solutions administered by, of course, government. We're from the government and we're here to help.
Dangerous word in the world.
That's right, yeah.
Stateful words.
Moral equivalence. So the strategy of this rhetoric of flattening distinctions between right and wrong. So shoplifting is now reframed as economic survival. It diminishes that accountability and it makes it instead look like holding someone accountable, that's you being oppressive. Substitution and sanitization. Language is softened to obscure the severity or implications of behaviors. So prostitution, for example, they'll try to refer it as sex work. Trying to weaken the stigma. Yeah, do you have an example?
Well, I was just thinking, the war in Iran.
Yeah?
Trump is calling it an incursion. I think they're trying to soften that.
Okay,
that
sure.
It's not a war.
Sure, right.
I think he's doing a little of that right now.
Well, you know, political technology is philosophically neutral. We can all take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm kind of siloed in my information, maybe like some other people.
Sure.
But isn't wokeness kind of losing some of its appeal and some of its gravitas?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you, and I think we're definitely seeing that resurgence. And just as like a mom, for example, Target in June, when Biden was president, was like, whoo, rainbows and all kinds of just craziness. Target this year in June was all American flags. So very excited about this. You're right, but we also can't really take our foot off the gas pedal, or else, you know, they will definitely creep back in with this because, I mean, they have all these institutions lined up ready to go. It's just a matter of if they have the power or not. You know, so many times in the kind of that woke left space, you see a bunch of them on payrolls of nonprofits and things like that, and then they're the ones who go and run and be candidates, and that can be very impactful, especially in, let's say, part-time legislature states. So in New Mexico, we were just having a candidate recruitment workshop, and we're working with conservatives, and they said, you know, it's hard for us to find conservatives to run for office if you're not retired, because you know, it's totally voluntary. You're not getting compensated for your time. The legislature is in session every year. Who's going to let their employee go for 45 days, 90 days, some of these, you know, sessions? And the answer is, well, the left has a nonprofit called Emerge, where they, you know, make sure that these candidates who are young Latina women are all on some payrolls of some nonprofits the rest of the year, and then they're available to serve. So it's infrastructure like that they've been so diligent and disciplined in creating and exploiting and whatnot. We're lucky that the wokeism is on the defeat, and we all feel really good and empowered about that. But the structural creep is real, and that's why we're educating ourselves. So the erosion of accountability, very real consequence. When responsibility is shifted from the individual to the state, personal growth and behavioral correction are hindered. Something when you work with kids and adults alike, Anyone's only going to perform to what you expect from them. Expansion of the welfare state. As problems are reframed as structural rather than behavioral and individual accountability, well, then bureaucracies are going to emerge to manage those injustices. Learned helplessness, disempowerment of the individual. People are encouraged to view themselves as powerless and dependent on state systems. And policies that don't work, right? Policies based on victim framing often fail to reduce crime. So California, a great example. Anything under $950 of theft was considered a misdemeanor and not a felony. And you could go do that every day. And we only saw then shoplifting just go through the roof.
About the same way. $1,250 and it was never cumulative. So you go out to your car, put the $1,200.49 in there, go back inside, do the same thing over and over and over, and it was always a misdemeanor.
Yep.
Didn't they lower that?
$950.
No, yeah.
No, you're right, they did because they saw how destructive it was. It became so obvious that not even the leftists could keep defending it anymore.
The worst part was
everything's locked up. I know. It's just crazy.
They would steal.
And that's how these policies are so destructive.
Calculate what they were doing.
So fighting that linguistic battle is truly essential to winning the ideological battle. So as we think about crafting our messages, we're going to be very intentional about the words that we use.
Antifa is intentionally deceptive in its ideology. On the one hand, they want the public to believe, and this is where the role of the mainstream media is very important to them for this, they want enough of the public to believe that they are racial justice activists. You see them referred to as that in the press, as anti-racist protesters, social justice protesters, and anti-fascist protesters. So when you have a liberal woman, middle class in Portland who hears that, believes it, reads it in the New York Times and the Washington Post, yeah, I'm on board with that. I'm against Trump, I'm against fascism, I'm against racism, I'm against hate speech. I'm gonna go out and support them. I'm gonna share their articles, their messaging. I'm gonna encourage other people to do that. And that's one big layer of support that exists. And it's a symbiotic relationship because those people are also simultaneously radicalized. They don't realize it.
So Antifa, very strategic name chosen for them, right? The anti-fascists. I mean, it sounds like a comic book vigilante kind of crime-fighting group, right? So again, strategic with the language. So the redefinition of these public policy language is not accidental. We have to respond by reclaiming language, highlighting the human cost of dependency, and recentering the moral value of accountability. Speak like a person, not a consultant. When we train, we always talk about that message written at the 7th grade level is going to be your winning message. Don't say fiscal imbalance or regulatory reform. Infrastructure, fiscal responsibility, revenue enhancements. So promote truth in language, but without sounding needlessly harsh. Remember, caring and fair always wins the day. Use real human terms. Don't get mad except on purpose. That's one of Morton's laws. Don't concede the caring and fairness side of the argument, right? You can have a caring and fair side of your argument too. By choosing accurate words, you appear as the reasonable truth teller. So anchor your issue in a widely held value before discussing the policy specifics. So again, this is that value-led communication. So you can start with the value. I'll give you an example. Conservatives in Arizona, some of them were on the losing end of the developmental disability issue last summer. In Arizona, we have a safety net for those with developmental disabilities, where the state comes in and takes care of some of the health care. That includes people who were born with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, other similar conditions. Conservatives were concerned about fraud going on, and some of the legislators said, hey, there's fraud in this program and we need to chase it down. All the moms heard was, you're coming after the program. So how could that conservative do value-led messaging? Well, some of them figured it out. They turned it around and they started with, I care so much about this community. I agree we should be protecting our most vulnerable, and that's what this community is. I'm concerned if we don't track down the fraud, that funding won't be there to sustain, to continue to protect these people indefinitely. That's the value-led communication, where we lead with that value first. Then we can discuss policy specifics like audits and things like that. Don't lead with that. Because then people are angry elephants and they won't hear what you say next. So people are more receptive when they hear their core values affirmed, so lead with that. Frame your position around a form of freedom, safety, fairness, family, and community. So you were talking about the abortion issue. You know, it's not fair to those women. Is it fair for women to be getting subpar health care from anybody who just has a couple alphabet letters after their name? They're not really even in a role of providing that patient-client relationship. What about the follow-up after a woman has a medical abortion like that? What kind of state is she going to be in? And she was given this subpar healthcare without appropriate follow-up. You know, that's very uncaring that this bill would allow that. So speak to that value first, not the issue first. Research shows support increases when a policy was framed in terms of the listener's values. So Holly talked about those 6 moral foundations. Those are ways that you can frame your issue. No family should have to choose between heating or cooling their home and paying their rent or mortgage. So that's a way to lead on talking about energy prices. Healthcare. Start with the shared value of health and compassion. We all want our loved ones to get the care they need. So again, sometimes when we look at, let's say, the state is expanding the Medicaid benefits to include illegal immigrants or something like that, why should Americans who are in this program have to experience a shortage of doctors because we have overextended this program? You know, that seems very uncaring. I want everyone to get that care that they deserve. Economy and taxes, frame it as fairness and merit. Hard work should be rewarded, not punished. So write down the key value first, and then you can, from there, write down your policy position. Craft a one-liner that starts with the value. So expose reframing. Point out redirections. If the leftist renames a failed or unpopular policy with a pretty title or euphemism, highlight that. Don't let them get away with it. Translate those buzzwords into plain terms. So many times they hide bad policies behind academic jargon.
Yep. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you.
Oh,
You're
nothing like us.
You know, I'm a 960 SAT guy.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, and I'm not trying to offend anyone. You know, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot. You've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in.
So cringe.
Yeah, because he has a disability.
Well, he's a victim, right? Yes, yes, right.
I'm like you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. I cannot read.
You have to have a passport. 2/3 African Americans don't even have passports.
Gavin Newsom continues to speak down to Black people, saying that we aren't smart enough or capable of getting an ID or a passport or even score higher than 1,000 on our SATs. Even in his last podcast, he was saying that Black Americans aren't capable of reading. You say that you're like us. If you were like us, you would know that we're doctors, we're lawyers, community leaders, veterans who fought for this country, parents raising the next generation of leaders. We are Americans, and we will never be defined by someone else's limitations.
That's right. Don't let them get away with it.
So how she became more forceful to get the positive and a little softer in bringing out his negatives. But
Sure.
instead of yelling about his negatives, she was more forceful in the positive.
That's right. Insist on your position. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Have you found the messaging and stuff like that gets lost because of we advertise the fact of Republican Party is putting that out? I ask this because of the State of the Union. They redid that, put it in AI, and 91% of society across every demographic, across all parties, polled that the State of the Union was impactful for Americans. 91%. But when Trump did it, it was 50s. So do you find that we're detracting our own message by putting that?
It depends on your district, you know? I mean, Corinne Rankin is chair of the California Republican Party. So, I mean, that's her role. She's going to do that. But there's been other times where I've been on campaigns in districts where, you know, we couldn't win just through getting conservative voters to vote for us. We really had to build strategic coalitions. Right. In that case, in those districts, most certainly, you know, we were using those third-party supporters who weren't necessarily directly identifying with the Republican Party because that wasn't strategic for us in that district. So it just depends. She's putting that out there because she's trying to grow the brand of the Republican Party of California. That's her role right now. But in general, if you're on a campaign or something like that where it'd be strategic to debunk that in another way, again, that's where Holly said those social media, rapid response teams, stuff like that, we'll have people chime in who are unassociated, for sure. So truth brings solutions. That word laundering delays actions and it hides the real problems. We don't help addicts by pretending addiction is someone else's fault. We help them by getting them the tough, real help they need and holding them accountable to take it. And anyone who's gone through any kind of an addiction recovery program will stand by that. So offer better solutions, not just criticism. This is important when we work with, let's say, state legislators who are in a minority. We say, careful that you're not just being a critic on the side, right? When voters want to give you a chance, here's the ball, take it and govern. You need to make sure you have the solutions, not just the critiques of who's been governing. Frame alternatives in positive terms. So instead of being the anti-something, emphasize that you are the for this. I think that gun control is very important. For example, don't be the anti-gun control, be the pro-2A. By consistently coupling criticism with solutions, you counteract the argument that politicians just complain and don't fix things.
Can you go back?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So shift that discussion from systems to stories. Use personal narratives to cut through abstract system-level rhetoric. Break it down to how this affects one student, how this affects someone in the community. Put a face on the issue, especially if they can tell their own story, a story of an actual person who's affected. Share your own journey and values through story. counter that system rhetoric with individual successes. Individual stories hit much harder than generalizations. And this is so true when we think about, we know that only 40% of the students are reading at grade level. That just kind of goes over our head. Like, we understand it, but we don't internalize it as much as if you tell a story about a student named Lydia and how she is struggling today to keep up in 5th grade because she was not given that personal instruction in 1st and 2nd grade when she needed it. And now she's not reading, and how it's affecting her as a barrier personally. So highlight how leftist policies create perverse incentives and reward destructive dependency. Emotional framing disguises structural design. Policy design removes conditions and expectations. So many of the systems reward the status quo and penalize responsibility. And as we've seen, there's a culture shift towards victimhood and entitlement. So frame the debate as a choice between competing visions. Make your vision the appealing one and create contrast. There's nothing worse than running and you say that there's no difference between you and the other candidate. Use parallel language to compare. Invoke that vivid imagery and that storytelling. Keep it relatable and keep it truthful. The number one thing we see in campaigns is like resume fraud. When someone says they're a veteran and they weren't or something, your story is valid, but keep it truthful. So you can use satire sometimes to disarm. When it's appropriate, deploy humor. Can be a powerful tool. Keep it light, keep it clever. Inject some cultural references. Your humor can be a little bit self-deprecating to show that you don't have a big ego. And timing and tone. Use it appropriately.
I woke up one morning and it was there. Big government on my back. It's a huge problem. It's affecting everyone. They're taking over our healthcare, using our money to bail out big business. Even our kids are in trouble. Even them to pay for trillions of added debt. Congress supported big healthcare, big bailouts, big debt. Get Washington off our backs. Stop big government on election day.
Family Research Council Action PAC is responsible for the...
Very clever.
Fabulous.
Yeah, very clever. So be disciplined in your message, like Holly was talking about. Adopt that clear message and use it everywhere. It's better to have that one message that you're getting out there than have 12. Train. If you're a candidate, make sure that you're practicing with somebody to not get trapped in those questions, and make sure that you're blocking and you're bridging when you're getting those tough questions. Message discipline pays off by keeping voters focused on the contrast and solutions that you want to present. All right, well, thank you so much. It's now time for lunch. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give us a quick little rundown on fundraising. Nicole was talking about the Leadership Institute's fundraising. I started at Leadership Institute in 2023. We raised, I believe, we had raised $21 million in 22. In 23, it was 28. In 24, it was 40. In 25, it was 43. And now it is 53. No, in 25, it was 40. It was 53. 24, 43. That's a lot of fundraising growth over the last few years. And it's large in part because conservatives are joining in the movement and wanting to make sure that we can go out and get elected and win some seats. So fundraising is going to be important. I also shared with you about a school board race I worked on where we raised $500,000 for school board, which is still the largest fundraising school board race in American history of its in a county of its size, 68,000 students.
Whoa.
Yes. So it was huge. But I'll tell you, people were not just calling up and saying, hey, where can I send a check?
For sure.
We had to go out and get that money. Sure, some people went online and gave 20, 30 bucks, but we were searching for those large donations that would sustain the campaign. So in this module today, we're going to talk about the fundamentals of fundraising, developing a finance plan, and the art of the ask, because there truly is an art to it. It's not as simple as, hey, would you give me $100 for my campaign? It's much more than that. So we're going to show you, whoa, I don't know what just happened, but they said, we're going to go quickly through this one. I wouldn't
Nope,
even
this
know
one
how
needs
to
to be slow.
recreate that if I tried. Let me get back here, back to the beginning. Okay, here we go. So our founder, Morton Blackwell, says, you can't save the world if you can't pay the rent.
Wow.
You can't win a campaign if you don't have money. And it all is going to fall really and truly on the candidate and if they have a professional fundraiser. That's who raises the money. A campaign manager can't make the calls, your consultant can't make the calls. It's all about you. And I have worked on campaigns where the candidate wouldn't make their calls. So guess what? My name, my reputation was on the line because the candidate wouldn't do his job. And I will tell you here and now, that is the only reason that I have ever fired candidates from me working for them, is because they weren't willing to do the work that it takes in order to get elected, and fundraising is a big part of it. So let's first talk about some reasons why people don't give. One, they're not asked. I had been professionally involved in politics for 23 years before the first person asked me for a donation.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild, isn't it? And I've donated to every person who's ever asked me if I believed in their campaign, which has been almost everyone who's ever asked me. I just base the dollar amount on how much I believe in their campaign, right? So, not asked, that's a reason why. Also a vague ask. So that ask, I said, hey, would you give me $100 to support my campaign? Donors want a specific ask. And if you come to them and you say, we have the deadline to put our order in by Friday for more yard signs, and we have 0 right now. Can I count on you, please, to give me $100 toward paying for these yard signs so we can finish this campaign strong? If they believe that that money's going right to the yard signs and not to pay a big fancy consultant or something like that, they're going to be more likely to give. And then use their money on what you tell them you're using it for. Keep that trust going. A lot of times they don't know where or how to give. Maybe your website doesn't even have a donate button on it.
Oh, it does.
If you're working with a candidate who doesn't have a donate button on their website, call them today and tell them to get it put on there. People need to know how to give. They should also be putting the link to donate on their social media page very regularly so people know how. They don't believe you will win. That's a great reason. I would prefer people who didn't believe we would win to wait until they started believing to give. Because I don't want people to feel like they're wasting their money, and they're going to give me more if they get to a point where they're going to believe we can win. So sometimes you might ask for a small amount first if you think they're hesitant. You're going to come back to them and say, hey, I don't know if you've seen the professionalism of my campaign, but we are covering a lot of ground. We're making up ground. Latest polling says this much. Would you be willing to give a little bit more? It would be better to do that than to ask for a big ask in the beginning and be told no. And then they won't cross your opponent. This happens a lot in primary season. Or you might see the same donor give to both candidates in the primary an equal amount because they're saying, I don't care who wins, I'm going to support the winner in the end. But in order to raise money, you need to shift your mindset. You are not asking donors to fund your family vacation to Mexico. You are asking donors to invest in you going to make their life better as you serve them in this position. So shift your mindset. This is not charity. You're saying, will you please invest in me so I can go and do work for you, and likely underpaid because public service doesn't always pay very well, right? So this is not a handout. This is an investment in a better future for the people in your district. And so before you fundraise, you need to know the law. And so having a treasurer is going to be really important, or a campaign finance compliance person, whatever you all call them here. That's important because one way to very quickly get some bad press is to mess up your campaign finance reports. And they will post that right on the front page. So make sure you stay out of trouble and hire someone who knows how it works, or have a volunteer who knows how it works. And every state is going to have different laws. So you might have a cousin in Tennessee who's willing to do your compliance. If they don't know the laws or aren't willing to familiarize themselves, you would be better off paying someone a small fee locally because they will know the local laws. This is important. This is one reason why the Leadership Institute doesn't have a campaign finance compliance class, because the laws differ so greatly from state to state. We don't want to advise people incorrectly. You need to track all of your receipts and expenditures. You never know when someone's going to see you purchasing something. Go check your campaign finance reports and see it's not on there, and it's going to be a problem. So make sure you're turning all of those in and tracking them. You have the proper disclaimer on all of your items that you're paying for with these funds you're raising. Different states have different rules. For federal, a disclaimer has to have a box around the paid for by at the bottom. For your state, often that's not the case. There's a certain amount, height or size of font that's the minimum. Also, your disclaimer needs to be opposite color of the background. So you can't do a light blue paid for by and a dark blue background. It needs to be like white on black or white on red, that where it's going to actually stand out. You can't hide those disclaimers. What is the maximum contribution limit that you can accept? Different positions are going to have different limits. In Colorado, $2,500 for school board, but $400 for state legislature. So it can be very different. Make sure you look at that. Registration requirements, are you actually filing to run correctly? What are the deadlines for filing your reports? If you're late on your report, it can result in a daily charge. And you don't want that to happen. So staying on top of that, and are you able to take contributions from corporations or from organizations? You need to know all of this because this is going to tell you who you're allowed to ask for money. So it's not just about making sure you're following the law, but also who is the list of people that I can follow the law and talk to. So there are 3 donor motivations. 1, issue motivated. These are going to be more of your direct response donors, where you can send an email saying, oh dear God, look at what they're doing with that ballot question that this gentleman asked about. We need help and support in order to stop this. So that's going to be the largest number of people are going to fall into this category. Then you're going to have socially motivated donors. They might buy a $200 ticket to your fundraiser, not really because they care that much about you, but because 3 of their ritzy friends are going to be there and they want to show up and be in the pictures, right? So socially motivated, they want to be seen. And as we go up this pyramid, the amount of time you're going to need to spend with these individual donors are going to go up. So last, you have your access motivated major donors. These are people that may pay for VIP at your fundraiser at $10,000 because they want that access to you. They're always going to have a reason though, so keep that in mind. We should never be participating in quid pro quo. Give me a donation now so I go and vote this way for you. You have to think about that. But your major donors are going to take a lot more time. You may have to call them 10 times before they respond. And it might not be intentional. They might just be busy people running a large corporation or something, and they haven't had the time to get back to you. You still persevere. You still make those calls. Okay, and I'm not going to really go through this one, but I'm just going to tell you really quickly. You can see the bulk of the money across the board comes from large individual contributions. This is of Congress, House, and Senate. PACs are going to be a chunk of it that Republicans utilize, but not really the Democrats. But you can see, by and large, the largest amount are these large individuals. So it is worth the investment of your time to connect with these people and let them know why you're the best choice in this position. And that shows it again. 48% of all the money you raise are going to come from those large donors. In that school board race I was telling you about, where we raised $500,000, we had one person give us $100,000. They lobbied at the legislature to have the limits changed after we beat them at their own game. So now it's $2,500, but it was unlimited. So we had somebody give us $100,000, then we had somebody else give us $120,000. I had to chase those people down to get the meeting in the first place, and then I had to chase them down even harder just to get the check after they had committed to it. And it wasn't because they didn't want to give it to us, it was just they were busy, and getting the time to go to their house and pick it up was tough. So, also, here's something to think about. If you are utilizing a donation platform like Anadot, WinRed, something like that, they are going to take a percentage for a fee. So if it is a large donation, you want them to give you a check. You do not want them to do this. I almost died when that $120,000 donation came through the platform. Because I had to pay like something like 6% of it because it was over a certain amount. How many more palm cards could we have bought?
Right.
How many more TV, we paid for commercials. How many more commercials could we have bought if we hadn't paid that fee? So that's definitely something you need to think about. Pick up the check if it's a large donation. Set a dollar amount that's going to put it into that pick up the check category, not just donate online. And then you're going to need to develop a finance plan. So why do you create this? One, it's going to tell you who's responsible for the fundraising and all the logistics, but you are the most responsible if you're the candidate. If you are volunteering for a candidate and you see that they're not taking the time to make their phone calls, it's time to speak up and then maybe spend your time on somewhere else because they're going to lose because they don't have any money. You can't win elections without money. Maybe at like a town council level, sure. But after that, must have money. So, core commitments. The candidate must be comfortable asking for money. Anytime a candidate meets with me to ask me to come on board and work for them in some way, that's going to be one of my first questions. Are you comfortable fundraising? Because if they're like, oh, I'm trying to get there, I might not want to work for you. Because then I'm going to try to have to perform a miracle, like the 5 loaves and fishes, in order to get this campaign through. And I'm not in the business of making miracles. That's God, right? And the candidate must be heavily involved. Again, if they have a paid fundraiser, odds are that that fundraiser, the only thing they're doing is giving them the contacts and then sitting and listening to the candidate on the phone. So you still have to make your calls, even if you're paying a fundraiser. Now, if you are a candidate that really struggles to make those calls because the phone feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds, get a volunteer or someone to sit and make your calls with you for that accountability piece. And you don't necessarily even have to be in the same room. I've had clients, we jump on a Zoom call, I send them the list of numbers to call, I'm muted and I'm listening in the background. I'm their accountability and I'm also taking notes on what's being said so we can follow up with people when needed. So what's in your finance plan? First is your fundraising goal. How much money is it going to take to win this race? And I would set the goal at 20% above that. Because what you don't want to do, here's another example, and I'm trying to fly quickly through this, but I have a flight to catch, that's the only reason why. But you want to make sure that your goal, like in 2023, I managed this, I consulted on the school board race to try to take those other 3 seats out of the 7 that we didn't get. And what happened was the teachers union used all of our talking points from 2021 and claimed that they believed all of this stuff to be true, which of course they didn't. They were lying, and they had buku bucks. Well, guess what? We had already spent our money by the time they started doing that, so we didn't have the money to combat it. And so that's where set the goal 20% above. So if there's an October surprise that pops up and you need to be able to go against it, that you still have some money in the bank. Because right there at the end is where you're going to spend the bulk of your money. Tactics. So how will you meet your goal? Then the finance calendar tells us when we need to have the money by. because you don't just spend the money the last week before the election. You need mailers to start going out by a certain day, text messages. So your candidate and the whole team needs to understand how much money needs to be raised by when. And then also your list of potential donors. You can procure these lists from all kinds of places, but one thing that I really recommend is reaching out to the people who held the seat you're running for before you, if they're friendly to you, and ask them to share their donor list. If they're out of politics, they might really not care at all and share the whole list with you. If they're not willing to share the list, ask if they'd be willing to give you 5 good names off the list and start there. But you can procure lists from a lot of different places. That is typically an advantage to hiring an actual fundraiser, because they will come with lists. You don't have to find those lists. And if they don't come with lists as a fundraiser, do not hire them. Tell them, nope, we cannot find unique original donors to this in this amount of time. I'm gonna have to go with someone who has a more built out list. Because I'm not a fundraiser, like I do fundraise, but that's not like my specialty. So somebody could hire me and I could probably raise them some money, but they would be doing them a disservice to hire me over someone with those long lists. Set fundraising goals. That says 10%, I say add 20% buffer. How are you gonna do it? The bulk is gonna be your call time. But then there are also these things called finance committees. Has anyone ever heard of a finance committee? Okay, so these are gonna be your people who are influential in some way monetarily. They don't necessarily have to have all the money, but they need to run in circles with people who can connect you to money, because your finance committee is going to send you some lists. They're also likely to host fundraisers for you and invite the people on their lists. So asking someone to be on your finance committee, it is not an honorary role. They actually have to do some work to be on it, and that is hosting or giving you a list of people to call, or maybe even they're going to coffee meetings with you, with their connection, so you can then try to raise money. You can also do online, peer-to-peer texting, direct mail, telemarketing, events, but the bulk of your money are gonna come from those 2 sources, call time and finance committee. So your finance calendar, that you can see these have dates. This is February 17th all the way to October 18th. So it should be increasing for the large spend at the end here. From August to October, it goes through the roof. Finance calendar, so here we go. You see, you should be sending your large donors an email update about the status of the campaign periodically. Not necessarily all of your micro donors, maybe like, depending on what you're running for, $50 and below, they may not be on that list, but you're talking anybody you consider a major donor based on what your team decides is a large donation. So send them some of that, and then you have to think, direct mail piece drops in mailboxes May 17th. So we know we're gonna need the money for this by like May 1st at the latest, so we can pay to get it sent out. So writing something like this that lets you know when you need the money, and also about what events may produce money, are going to help you. List of potential donors. Who are you going to ask? So aside from asking people who have held the position before, you're going to look at your family and your friends. This is your love money. This is why I fired a client straight away, because I asked him to make a list of 50 people that he thinks would give him $25 at least. Okay? And he's running for school board. If somebody can't find 50 people to give them $25 that love them already, like I could tell you 50 people who would give me $25 no matter what the reason was. If I called them and was like, I just need it, can you help me out? They'll give it to me. If they can't find it, they probably shouldn't even be running. Because how are you gonna get way more than 50 people to actually give you their vote, right? So family, friends, business associates, contacts of your contacts. So people in your network, membership groups, if you're part of the PTA, Kiwanis, faith-based, your church, Chamber of Commerce, country club, and other sources are lapsed donors. So maybe people who gave you last reporting period and you believe they gave you less than what they are capable of, hit them again. Let them know we're still going, but my opponent's out fundraising me 2-to-1. Can you help me make up this gap? We really have to send out this mail piece by Tuesday, and we're $8,000 short. that type of ask. The book of lists, this is going to show you what organizations and notable people have donated money to other people before. So, like once for a school board race, I contacted the family with Walmart because I saw they donated to a lot of places. Same thing with Project 1776. They gave $10,000. I found them on the book of lists. Nobody told me to call them. I just looked them up. $10,000. It's that easy. And then asking the previous candidate, as we already discussed. So you've got a finance plan. So now what? Well, first you need to research. This is where you get to where you find your donors, but also what are your donors actually capable of giving? What have they historically given to other candidates in the past? That will give you an idea of how much to ask them for. Then make that specific ask. This much money for this thing, these signs, these palm cards. But I recommend, and our senior vice president of the Leadership Institute said this, and I completely agree. You should ask in a range. Initially, they said do a direct dollar amount ask. So can I count on you to donate $700 to help us get this mailer out? But what you should do is look at what they've given before, and that's your bottom number, but maybe you say $700 to $900. Because we found more often than not, they go with the number in the middle. So you got $100 more than they would have given you, but maybe not the top of your ask. So try to give them a range that's reasonable. Don't shoot the moon though. If you don't know how much they're gonna give, don't ask for $10,000 off the bat. Feel them out a little bit. But you also need to research what types of people your donors are, what types of things they're interested in. If you have an intern or a volunteer on your campaign that's willing to just look on Facebook and Instagram for everybody that's on your list of potential donors and tell you just a couple things about them. Because maybe Timmy Turner has a daughter who plays lacrosse and you have a granddaughter who plays lacrosse. You could casually mention lacrosse at some point in your conversation with Timmy, and he's gonna find that to be relatable. Then he'll be like, oh, my daughter plays lacrosse. How cool. Do you guys play up at this place every so often? Yeah, we do. We love that field. Think about something you can find to make that connection. Now, don't say, I was researching you and I saw. Just bring it up very casually. A focus pitch, so make sure that you can answer the key questions that donors may have about your campaign. I believe some of those questions are mentioned later. And then write down what you're going to say. Not necessarily word for word, but have a good idea of your talking points and how you're going to make that pitch. So have a call sheet. Have a call sheet here. We don't necessarily have to do this like paper. Your campaign person can email this to you. But who are you calling? Phone number, email, how much they've given in other campaigns before, and then what might be important to them. So maybe in here somewhere we put the lacrosse info too. That way you as the candidate has the information in front of them and knows exactly who they're talking to. So this just shows an example of the way that you can track your phone calls, right? So it's gonna say call status. So have they called? Did you send a thank you note yet? For fundraising, when did this happen? Was it completed? What date did the pledge get made? How much? And what date did the pledge actually come in? You know, chasing down those checks from those busy people. How much was it? And then what are any notes that we can utilize later the next time we call them? This is easily done and it's free. It just takes some manpower. Maybe you have a great volunteer who's into this. They can do this. And just some more of the spreadsheets. I'm not going to go through all of those. Okay, so there's the questions I was talking about. Let's go back. Okay, you should have answers for all 4 of these questions anytime you're calling a donor. Why are you running for office? How are you going to actually win? What is the state of your campaign? Do you have a team built? How many volunteers do you have? Do you have someone who's working campaign compliance?
We had a question back here.
Oh, yes.
Well, you can finish and then I have a question.
Okay, great. And then what is your vision for the community and policy issues? Be sure that you're not taking this opportunity to use, to talk a lot about everything that's going wrong. you can talk a little bit about what's going wrong, but you need to have solutions when you're calling. This is what's wrong, and this is what I'm going to do about it if you invest in my campaign and I pull off the win. Yes?
I find lots of candidates can answer these questions in a paragraph. Should it be a sentence? Should it be 2 words? What are you thinking in that?
I wouldn't limit it just because they're not going to ask you these like an interview. It's going to have to be worked into conversation. So I would say just whatever feels appropriate. If they have a lot of background that really helps them in being the best candidate for this position, maybe you need a paragraph on some of these, but maybe on others, it's just a couple sentences, short and sweet. But value, I've got you next, value the donor's time and don't keep them on the phone too long unless they seem willing and really like they want to chat. Yes?
So you say, how can you win? What goes into explaining how you can win? Is that I have this much funding, I have...
Yep, I have a team of support around me that are willing to knock doors. I've just secured, $27,000 in donations in the last month, whereas my opponent only raised 10. And these issues are incredibly important, and this has been a passion project of mine, and I think we can solve this problem by this. So what we're gonna do is knock this many doors and make this many phone calls in order to get the word out. Yep, that's right. Okay. Exactly.
Excuse me, I have a thing on that one though.
Yes.
When you're raising funds, okay, and then you turn around and you compare it to your competitor, the issue is sometimes the competitor is getting money from the people you don't want to be liable to down the road.
Correct.
And that's where a difference could come in. Like, I'm a grassroots, so my money's coming from individuals, not from developers.
Right.
Which is even better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who you accept donations from can
so the
absolutely
volume
come
of
back
money
to haunt
is
you.
going to be different.
Well, it might. Here's the thing. You can have one person that, like a developer, let's say, to give $10,000, but that one person only votes once. Or you could have 200 grassroots volunteers ready and willing to show up and do the work, and they all vote, and then they're gonna go out and talk to people who vote. So, yeah, not necessarily, but I will say this. I hear a lot of grassroots campaigns say, well, we don't need money. We've got the people supporting. All campaigns need money. And if you are not raising funds at least half of what your donor or your opponent is, it's a lost cause. I hate to say it. I mean, once in a blue moon, I will see somebody come up and they really don't have any money, but they pull it off. But that's the exception, not the rule.
Two questions on that. One, how do you do it when the other person's been campaigning for a year, so you're already a year behind? And then secondly is strategically not letting them know what you actually have in your war chest. And I say that because there's somebody with $1.5 million in his war chest. I have $1 million vouched to me by these people, but the check has not exchanged hands. I don't have to claim it in my FEC, and I'm not putting anything in my FEC until after April 1st. So nobody knows what I actually have in my war chest as a don't show my hand. Secondly, for that part is I'm not going to take money from these people if I don't actually need it. And once I have it in my account and in my FEC, writing them the check back is going to be problematic. Or
it won't be, because when you win and you have all this extra money, you can then give them the option to take their donation back because you didn't need it, or to keep it with you to intimidate people next time from running against you. Because that's the thing, having a war chest is gonna run people off from running against you. And so, like, I've seen campaigns, especially before ballot qualifying has actually happened, where they're saying, our next report is gonna show $600,000 we've raised, and they'll announce it because they wanna intimidate people.
Sure.
And if I will say this, I would always advise against not taking money because you don't think you're gonna need it, because the amount of money you're capable of raising will keep people from challenging you in the primary or even in the general later. So you'd be better off returning it after the election than not getting it now. Yeah, okay. Still going. All right, so remember, you need to build authentic relationships with these donors. We talked about the amount of time you're going to spend on them. So if they're a larger donor, they need more time. Donors are human beings. They are not our ATMs. We can't just go with our handout. And if you're the candidate, or if you're working with the candidate, you should tell them they need to do what they can to maintain those relationships even once they're elected, in between election cycles. Because it's really hard to pick that phone up and call a donor and ask them for another $1,000 when they haven't heard anything from you in 2 years. So even if it's just an email update, hey, this is what we did for you while I'm serving here on town council this week. Helps them to feel like they're connected and a part of it, and that relationship keeps going. You need to be an active listener. Donors donate for a reason, and if you figure out that reason, they're going to likely keep donating to you long term. So listen to them more than you do the talking. Let them ask questions, and always show gratitude. I highly recommend, before you pick the phone up to make the next call, you write that thank you note. Put it in the envelope and have it ready to go. Candidates should write their own thank you notes whenever possible as well. People will start to learn their handwriting, and it will start to mean something to them. Here's an example.
How did you tell my voice? I haven't talked to you in a year. How was the engagement? I want all the details. What was perfect engagement? Oh, that's good. Well, congratulations. Yeah. Well, he's working very hard. Okay. I'll talk to you soon. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
All right, he'll max. His wife is gonna max out, and he'll try to raise her to 5. He's like, I've never given a raise in my life. And
and he'll raise another 5, right? So this guy's going to get off the phone and call some people in his network and bring some people in. I hate using Anthony Weiner in in any example. However, let me go back on this because okay. However, there aren't that many examples of fundraising calls taking place in a campaign office out there online. It's just not something we typically record. But she was able to make some of these calls for him because she's his wife. Okay? So in this situation, it was kind of okay that the candidate wasn't actually the one making the calls. But who is the most important person in this entire room?
So in the back, getting the information.
There you go, the note taker in the back, because next time he calls, he's gonna know they asked about the engagement. So, they asked about the engagement, that means when we call next time, maybe we say, when's the wedding? And you're building that relationship. You're showing the donor you're invested in what's going on in their life. And they probably found out about the engagement by looking at social media, because she brought it up first. How was the engagement? Oh, that's wonderful. So that is a great example of using that relationship to get that money, and then that donor then agreed to get even more money from other people. So you should schedule call time. 50% of every candidate's time should be spent making fundraising calls. Especially before you've reached that GOTV portion where the candidate needs to be out knocking doors, etc. 50% of every single day. Have a secluded, quiet office. Don't have the kids and your wife or nanny running in to jerk them out of the background while you're trying to make your phone calls. It is not a good look. So, secluded and quiet. Have water and snacks available. Just like kids, when you tell them it's their bedtime, we can think of a million excuses why we need to just take a quick break to not make more calls. Hungry, thirsty. Set yourself up for success. Be persistent in your ask. Don't shy away and back down from it. And have a staff member present that helps you with the accountability and with the note taking. Then, yes.
You're talking about having somebody with you. I suggest that to every candidate, no matter where they go or who they meet.
100%. Because you don't want to look like a loner. Like the lone wolf.
It's not just that, it's the backup.
Backup, exactly.
Because one-on-one is not good.
100%. And if you're at an event and somebody asks you to check on something, and you're at a campaign event, and then you don't follow through and check on that for them after the fact, they might not support you anymore. But if you have somebody there that's listening and making those notes on what you need to follow up on, it's really going to help you. It's the same with the fundraising. So in the conversations, we're building a rapport through the shared interest. We're asking questions. We're listening. We're sharing plans that align with their interests. So As you start, you want to convey scarcity in your fundraising. We're still short $12,000 to meet our goal by 2 weeks from now. It's urgent. The deadline is in 2 weeks, or we have to get this mail piece sent out by Saturday if it's going to hit mailboxes before Election Day. Whatever the case may be, we make a specific ask. So, would you be willing to invest $700 to $900 in my campaign so I can go out and make our lives better, make things a little easier for us in society, whatever the case may be. But then the most important part, silence. Don't break. After you make the ask, sit there no matter how awkward it gets and wait for them to speak first. Because as you keep going, you're giving them more reasons to get out of giving. But that silence feels heavy for them, and then they'll be like, okay. So keep specific ask and then keep silent until they speak first. Then it's time to do the follow-up. So whether that's an email confirming what they've told you on the phone. Okay? So it was so great to talk to you today. We are really grateful for your $800 contribution to my campaign. You can send this money in through the following ways, right? WinRed, Anadot, mail, snail mail, a check, etc. So you're going to want to follow up right away so they know how to do it and make it as easy as possible for them. Final takeaways, successful candidates spend the majority of their time fundraising. I'm going to say that one more time. Successful candidates spend the majority of their time fundraising. Maximize your fundraising programs with multiple programs and levels of donors. So maybe you have a casual fundraising event that is like a hoedown or something, and tickets are $50 each. Or maybe you're going to have a ritzy event for more of your major donors where tickets are $300 each. So have different types of events for different levels of donors. Utilize a broad network of empowered fundraising leaders and donors. So having that finance committee network that you can depend on who will connect you to other like-minded donors. Make fundraising more efficient by using proven principles, scarcity, urgency, consistency, silence. Another important one. Be persistent. Ask, and ask again. So if somebody tells you no in February, contact them again in April and give them all the reasons why you're a better candidate than they thought. Or maybe they were just waiting to see if somebody else got in the race. And they didn't, so now they're ready to donate. Lots of reasons why. So continue to follow up and ask again. Always show your gratitude. I have absolutely had donors where they gave, say, $500 because the candidate called and asked, but once they received the thank you note, they sent another $2,500 because they just wanted to make sure that they were going to get that note first. Do we have any questions? All right.
Oh, and I have one.
Yes.
So if you, I've done fund development in other areas, but is it important in your initial campaign where you have your idea of what your goals are, to have a base before you go, a base of funding before you go on to general fundraising? I was kind of taught it, but it doesn't sound like it's
you can. Here's the thing. What I would do if I was considering running for office is I would start meeting with some donors and let them know I'm considering. So not that I'm running. Like in Colorado, from the moment you tell someone you're officially running, you have 10 days to file. But if you do like I'm considering running, would I be able to count on your support? Would you be willing to invest in my campaign if the time comes? Having those people kind of ready and teed up to give is fantastic. You can't fundraise until you've made that formal announcement. Okay. But also, I would have a base of people that you know you're going to reach out to the moment you have made the ballot as the nominee. So, meaning people who might not have given to you in the primary because they don't want to take sides, have that list ready to go too. So you can have prospecting lists in advance of people that you know you're going to contact when the time comes. And it is a powerful message if within like the first week of you announcing you've raised a lot of money. That's how you're going to keep your field clear, where you're not going to have 63 opponents because everybody thinks they can run. Nope, I'm not running against Susie because she has a pile of money sitting there ready to take me out with it.
Holly, can we get you in one photo before you sneak to the
Of
airport?
course.
Okay, here, why don't you go over there and
Oh, I thought you were wanting me to sit in that chair. I was like,
She's
gonna
stand
stand.
there.
Action.
Yeah. Let's see. Actually, I can't. Let me do the wide angle. Okay, ready? One,
Look up, Drew.
2, 3. Oh, fantastic! Thank you, Holly, so much.
Thank you. It was great being with you all. Thank you.
Have a great trip.
Thank
luck
you.
at the airport.
I want to get home so I can spend the day with my son tomorrow before he's back at school Monday.
Oh.
So, yes. Thank you again.
Yes.
Is it time? Oh, yeah, she, that's why I'm saying these.
In the hall. You can make the announcement that you can sign in the hall.
Nicole, what I think we should do next year on this is all the coalitions, and I say coalitions, Reno Women's Republicans, the Mount Rose Republicans, the GOP, all of the groups, get them all together at one time.
Good luck.
Exactly.
Talk
I
about
say that.
divisions.
No,
I just.
How many times have you tried to do that?
There's so much division within all of those groups.
There is. You're absolutely right.
But no, that's a good point.
And I said this.
I think we should get Nicholas St. John on the same stage as Bruce Parks.
Is the
I think we should get you on stage with Bruce Parks to demonstrate how the party has a fracture.
I already saw it.
When I walked
It was on the podcast on Wednesday.
They had to have
She wouldn't answer my questions.
the last time they
So
here.
when
Leadership.
But that's just kind of, those two highlight the problem of how do we bring it all together.
That's very disinformant. That was, that
Well, you start by getting rid of Bruce.
Sick.
He's the only one. I've been doing everything normal. He's the one who keeps injecting himself in between me and everybody else.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. I had a conversation with him the other day, and you came up, and I didn't bring you up.
I know. I'm living so rent-free in his head, taking up so much space. He can't hardly think about anything else.
All right, we got one last module to close out the day.
Oh, there's
I think this one's a good one. It
Bruce
kind
Parks,
of
and Nicholas St.
ties a
John
nice
have a division
bow
of
on
the
everything that we
party.
learned.
Nick
So
does
this
a
is
whole lot of
how to put
data.
together your campaign.
He's an analyst.
So as Morton Blackwell says,
he's
you
got all
owe
this
it to your
data.
philosophy to study how to
There's
win.
that divergence
And that's what
between
all of you are
Parks and the
doing
party.
here today. So command focus. A good campaign has a strong, single, unified theme that really puts together the messaging. It defines to the voters a clear choice. When was the moment that Kamala Harris lost her bid for the presidency?
When she announced it.
Yeah, obviously as conservatives, we agree with that. But the moment was she was on The View, and the ladies on The View asked her, what would you have done differently than Joe Biden? Not a thing. Contrast. So much in campaigns is about contrast. So make sure your command focus is creating that contrast. We're going to see an example of that. We're going to see some examples that make us real uncomfortable, but we're going to go there anyways because we can learn from some of the messages on the other side. Forward. Okay, well, what was Obama's command focus when he ran the first time?
Change.
Right. Hope and change. What happens when you're the incumbent and you've been in office the last 4 years? Can you run on change?
Keep moving forward.
Yes. So you got to change your command focus. So he changed it to forward. Now let's see an example of this.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that Al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back, because the Cold War has been over for 20 years. But Governor, when it comes to our foreign policy, you seem to want to import the foreign policies of the 1980s, just like the social policies of the 1950s and the economic policies of the 1920s.
I mean, you got to hand it to Obama. He was real disciplined in learning that line. And unfortunately, Romney was very polite and let Obama get that whole thing out there. But he really did stay on message, forward. I'm the candidate going forward. Contrast, Romney, you're the one trying to take us backward. So a good command focused message will really create that contrast between you and your opponent. Here's one we're gonna like a lot better.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years. This afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will be married. And with inflation at less than half of what it was just 4 years ago, they can look forward with confidence to the future. It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
Beautifully done. That's a masterclass. Why would we ever want to return to where we were? Look how far I've brought us.
It was a Folgers commercial.
Okay. You got to brace yourself for this one.
Ladies
This
and
is how
gentlemen
not to be as a
of the Stark
candidate.
County Republican Party Executive Committee, good evening. And thank you, not only for your attendance, but for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Phil Davidson, and I am seeking our party's nomination for the position of Stark County Treasurer on November 10th. November of 2010, excuse me. In terms of my background, I am from the village of Minerva, where I am serving my 13th year of elected service as a Minerva Council member. In terms of education, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, a bachelor's degree in history, a master's degree in public administration, and a master's degree in communication.
Unbelievable, right?
You should have led with that.
Gotta look that up, but he was a real candidate. Yep. You should have led with that. And a master's in communication. So what went wrong in that video? I think we all felt it, but we can say it out loud.
Everything.
Everything.
He was reading.
I think he ran back to the podium to read his own name.
It helps to have read your
all these degrees.
Right. How can the voter even relate to that? Right.
What were they gonna do for us? Yeah.
So that's what you look like as a candidate if you're lacking command focus, right? It's real easy to get caught up in talking about yourself and your qualifications and this and that, and you kind of lose focus and forget that they're electing you to be a representative of them. Yes. Yeah.
I have a question, and maybe you know whether they should or shouldn't. It's funny how every time a candidate gets up, they talk about how long they've lived in Nevada or they've lived in Washoe County. I've been here 700 years, and my family's a caveman. And I mean, it's just, they spend most of their time doing that rather than telling us who they are, what they're going to do, and why we should vote for them.
But that's that worked for many years. We're from Nevada, you're better than anybody else. So I think it's dying out, but it still happens.
Yeah, and I would say, generally speaking, remembering that 3-part component that we had in the beginning, that real nature of politics. So, you need to present your vision for the future. What are your solutions you're offering? Your narrative identity is only one of those parts, and the fact you've lived here for a long time is maybe only one of those parts of your narrative. Have a compelling narrative, but, we're not staking a claim to the district or something, right? Well, and candidates also kind of need to know when to stop. So some of these dinners where everybody claps and, we pass the mic around, a lot of times 30 seconds in, 60 seconds in, the audience is very enamored with this candidate. They're like, yeah, that's a strong, compelling message. If the candidate knew to stop when they were ahead, the longer they talk, the more that they like, oh, you lost me. Yeah, go ahead.
If you are running that meeting and you hand a microphone to a candidate, you just screwed up the meeting. Never give a candidate a microphone.
So let's talk about that, 'cause you're right. Tom's totally right. So if I'm running the meeting and I would like to give the candidate a minute to introduce themselves,
Hello, I'm Nicholas.
never let go of that microphone. Keep it in your hand because you're keeping control. Once you hand that over, kiss your control goodbye. Yeah.
Keep talking after 3 minutes.
That's good.
So campaign strategy. Okay, political environment and landscape, key strategic assumptions, and command focus and theme. All right, so you're going to come up with a campaign plan that considers all of these things. Obviously, you might have to make adjustments as you go, but today you should be able to create a contrast between you and your candidate and build the focus, the command focus of your campaign off of that. So know your audience. You should have different messages for different segments of the voter population. So with your core group, you need to let them know, hey, I'm the one from the team carrying the flag. Recruit as many of them as possible to be campaign volunteers and donors. Get them invested in your campaign. To everyone else, maybe those non-political voters you're trying to capture, your message to them is going to be a little bit different. Maybe it's a little softer, a little more on the caring and fairness. Yes?
That just reminds me of talking about not knowing your audience. Remember that time when Kamala was running and Obama was addressing those African American athletes in the dressing room and was saying, you know, now if you don't vote for her, you're a misogynist and you're a racist and you don't like women. And it really backfired. A lot of them said, are we stupid? You know, telling us who to vote for, vote for women. Really backfired.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and same thing that Holly was talking about when you knock on a door. If you have a good walk app, you should be able to see their party registration, if they are a frequent voter, an infrequent voter, and tailor and tweak your messaging just a little bit depending on that. So who are you speaking to? Your relationship with them, the context of what you want to talk about. Make sure you're talking about things they care about. This is a good example of active listening.
There are a lot of people who are convinced that the federal government doesn't spend enough money battling crime. I don't have to say about the mean streets of America. This man is by the name of John May Marbury. His son was killed in the city of Detroit for a leather jacket, right, Mr. Marbury?
Yes. I would like to ask Mr. Clinton, what advice would he give to the administrations of the large urban areas of how to get rid of the illegal handguns and curbing the violence with an immediate impact?
I wish I knew how to have an immediate impact. And I thank you for having the courage to come here tonight with all the pain you must feel. Let me tell you where I think we ought to begin. We ought to begin by passing the crime bill that nearly passed last year, which does two things. It gives the urban areas of this country more police officers for the street. I have been in areas that were dominated by drugs, by weapons, and by murders.
Okay, so what did Clinton do right?
Connect.
Yes, it was very caring. A lot of times as a candidate or as a door knocker, we kind of get overwhelmed with what we think we're supposed to deliver as the message and we forget to listen. Repeat back to the person what they just said. I cannot imagine the pain that you are going through. I don't have that experience you have. And then the other thing he did right was offer those solutions. So he pivoted, offered the solutions well. I recognize this is a problem. This is the solution we're trying to pass to get us there. And the third thing he did was offer credibility. And he said, you know, I was in this urban area. I went on a ride along with the police. That's important. You guys, as candidates, can build credibility. So I'm going to spend a little time talking about that. If you lack credibility, you can build it, and you can build it immediately. And the reason why you want to do that is so you sound like that. When you get asked a question, instead of just speaking from what I've read in the news, from my textbook answer on economics, you know, this is my answer. No, you answer from a place of, when I was interviewing the dry cleaner, when I was in this industry, in the business, when I went on a farm tour recently, this is what I heard from the farmers. So you speak from that as credibility. For those of you going to Electech, Matt Shoup, he's one of our faculty. He's been here to Reno. He'll be there teaching. He tells a great story about building candidate credibility. He managed the Steve Garvey for U.S. Senate race, on the PR side of things for Steve Garvey, the candidate in California. First thing Steve did, came to him and said, I have great name ID. I don't really have credibility to be a U.S. Senator. I don't have that foreign affairs experience, stuff like that. First thing Matt did, put Steve and him on a plane. They went to Israel. Toured around, saw damage that had happened after October 7th, met with members of parliament, met with family members, different things like that. Came back. Every time Steve was interviewed by a journalist, he got to start the answer with, when I was in Israel, I witnessed. Awesome. And it gave him that credibility. When you look at good campaign photos and mailers and things, you'll notice there's something called social proof, where the candidate is never alone. They're always surrounded with people. And you'll notice they go on these tours that put them in a hard hat. Okay, all of these are those visual cues of credibility. How do we answer the why questions before they're asked? We can visually demonstrate that we are involved, we are plugged in, and when we give our answers, we can allude to that just by the way that we're answering. So the pathway to victory, Holly talked about it in her fundraising talk. You know, demonstrating that you have a pathway to victory, you could demonstrate that with money and fundraising, but you can also demonstrate that with votes. Everybody who's a candidate should calculate how many votes they need to win. That's right. Down to the exact number. And if you don't know the formula for that, send me an email. I'll send you the formula. There's a formula to do it. When you're talking to a donor, when you're talking to your constituents, when you're training your volunteers, everyone should know 1,264 votes to win. Down to the number. Do a little opposition research. What are the vulnerabilities of your opposition? What kind of coalitions can you build to form that pathway to victory? Can you win just by every R in the district voting for you, or do you need to build a more vibrant coalition, and how are you going to get there? Build your command focus around those campaign goals. That was like Holly's story. They found out voters really cared about stop signs, so they built command focus of that campaign around that stop sign. So voter history, the history of voter turnout. When you are studying that, always study in like elections. So don't compare a primary to a general. Don't compare a presidential year to an off year. Yes?
I have software called Campaign Statistics that we generate a lot of that stuff.
Great.
And 22 was actually, the primary was an anomaly. It was very strange because we had a governor with 15, 16 people running in the Republican Party. So the turnouts were very skewed, and it didn't fit the typical voting pattern.
Sure.
So most of the times you can. The other issue is that as they clean up voter rolls, they remove people who voted, and all of a sudden it starts skewing numbers. So.
And I agree with you. And you know what? In cases like that, first of all, always we recommend for the formula looking at 3 similar elections. So not the last 3 years, but 3 similar. And if there's one number that really stands out from the others, you can throw that one out and look then one more back. The other thing I would recommend is still calculate your goal, maybe just add a bigger cushion. So normally we recommend a 3% cushion. If you're feeling uncomfortable, make it 5, make it 7, whatever it is. Somehow, some way, calculate a number that is your goal.
Yeah, I need to get that formula from you, so I
Yeah.
can build it into the software.
Great.
You know? And also, is there understanding of out of independents, because independents have become a very real category of people. There's percentages of conservative versus liberal in the third party. Do you guys have information on those splits?
We have formulas for calculating swing voters, for example, but it's not based on, we don't know what it looks like in your state. But if you can look at similar elections, did they swing for that opposition? Did they swing for you? And you can calculate kind of the differences between, And demographic data. Is your opponent a school board member who's very popular? Maybe then you should calculate to get less votes from that precinct where that school board is, and then that means you need to get more somewhere else. So we're going to run through, we've already talked about a lot of these, but we're going to run through what a comprehensive campaign looks like. It can be very overwhelming because a lot of these things are scalable. So remember, if you don't have paid positions for all of this, these can be roles for your volunteers.
That's all.
So this is what it looks like. You have your fundraising side of things. Your fundraising side will also be heavily involved in events. They'll also be involved on the business side, making sure that your compliance is being followed. The business side is going to have your volunteer coordinator, someone who's managing your printing, things like that. And then obviously the political side, communication, messaging, field operations, knowing where to door knock, running any ads, targeting where those ads should go. Things to think about.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Excuse me. But I put out something that effectively said a full campaign committee has a minimum of 18 people because of the different jobs that are required.
I don't think that's necessarily true.
I'm just saying, a full. Sure.
A lot of times in a functional campaign, you'll see people double up on the roles. Mm-hmm. So the scheduler might also be who follows the candidate as kind of the body guy. And you'll see that.
I understand what you're talking about.
Right.
But the situation is volunteers are volunteers who
Sure.
have volunteer time.
Sure.
And if you're trying to get in 2 or 3 roles.
That's true. For volunteers, that 18.
And most of the people who are running in Washoe County rely on volunteers, not money to pay for things.
So building out 18 volunteers for those different roles, that would be very useful for sure. If you can build a team that big, that's great. Because again, the candidate should never be alone.
That's right.
And if someone else is driving them, that means the candidate has more call time because someone else is driving. Who's making sure to track down the checks? Who's making sure to hold the candidate accountable for the thank you notes? And then if you're going to run an event, you'll need volunteers for that, definitely. And then a door knocking team. So the business side, if you have any contracts, any expenses, you're going to want somebody who kind of is in charge of that. The candidate will be too busy for that. The political side, making sure they actually make it onto the ballot. We've seen some heartbreaking ballot access stories in different states. Scheduling. The candidate's time is very valuable. Campaigns run on a tight timeline. We have 3 valuable assets: time, talent, and treasure. So the scheduler really making sure that the candidate is doing what they're supposed to. I worked for a candidate one time who loved to put up yard signs. So when he was supposed to be making his fundraising calls, he was out in the hills putting up the signs. It was like how he decompressed. Someone needed to say, no, we're not doing that. So which voters are we communicating with? What messaging? Doing the micro-targeting. If you can't afford polling, try to find those people in your community who represent those different demographics. Like what Holly said, find the senior who's a reliable Republican voter. Find the young person who doesn't affiliate with a party. Run some messages past them. Candidate vulnerability assessment. Opposition research is not just for your opposition, it's also to be done on you. What do you have in your past that could influence voters in thinking that maybe you're not trustworthy? Winning elections is really about two things: trust and the future. For example, if you have a candidate who had a DUI, don't go silent on that and let your opponent bring that out and drag you down with it. Come out and say it. Come out and say it with a bunch of Mothers Against Drunk Driving behind you holding the big giant check because you just gave them $1,000 donation. And you talk about, yes, that was in my past and I admit that, whatever. You just took that away from the other side. The other side pays big money to have deep opposition research done on you, and you just took the air right out of their balloon. Look for opportunities like that. If you can come out and say it strategically, that's less for them to hold on you. And if you do have something on your opposition candidate, don't fire all your ammo at once.
Oh no.
Right? Because in the news cycle, whether it's one thing or 50 things, it's going to only get the 3 days of traction. So if you can fire one and then wait and then fire another and then wait, much more effective. Oh, and tools for rapid response. Remember, having your third-party people, your rapid response team, your social media team ready to come out and defend you. If someone else is accusing you, a lot of times a mistake campaigns make when it comes to crisis communication. So I'm a candidate, I'm being accused of something. So one mistake is feeling like I have to defend everything. In your Morton's Laws that you have in your folder, it says don't stop to kick every barking dog. So a lot of times if the candidate just is silent and lets it go, it'll blow over. Another thing is that when candidates get up and feel like they have to defend themselves, it sounds like over-explaining and it sounds like they're guilty. If they have someone else in the community come out and defend them and defend their honor, it's a much stronger message. So use your rapid response team for that. So communications, really developing that theme. Earned media. Anytime that you can do some earned media around, let's say, the launch of your campaign or some event like that, go ahead and take advantage of that. And then using campaign surrogates, very useful. Have someone from an industry, have someone from a faith community, build yourself a little kitchen cabinet of people who are willing to go out and speak on your behalf. The candidate can't always be everywhere. All right, one more uncomfortable Obama video, but this one's really good. So, in the beginning, we said that the why questions have to be answered before they're asked. So I want you to keep track in your head how many why questions Obama is answering in this one speech. So this was when he was a new freshman senator.
After 3 generations of practicing injury law here in Reno, we know how important having a lawyer with local knowledge is. We're local.
Let me express my deepest gratitude for the privilege of addressing this convention. Tonight is a particular honor for me because, let's face it, my presence on this stage is pretty unlikely. My father was a foreign student, born and raised in a small village in Kenya. He grew up herding goats, went to school in a tin roof shed. His father, my grandfather, was a cook, a domestic servant to the British. But my grandfather had larger dreams for his son. Through hard work and perseverance, my father got a scholarship to study in a magical place, America, that shone as a beacon of freedom and opportunity to so many who had come before. while studying here. My father met my mother. She was born in a town on the other side of the world, in Kansas.
After 3 generations of practicing injury law here in Reno, we know how important
Welcome to YouTube.
Generous America, you don't have to be rich to achieve your potential. They're both passed away now. And yet I know that on this night, they don't look down on me with great pride. They stand here, and I stand here today, grateful for the diversity of my heritage, aware that my parents' dreams live on in my 2 precious daughters. I stand here knowing that my story is part of the larger American story, that I owe a debt to all of those who came before me, and that in no other country on earth is my story even possible. Tonight, we gather to affirm the greatness of our nation. Not because of the height of our skyscrapers or the power of our military.
Okay, so one thing that you didn't get to hear was he explained that his name Barack and what it means and everything. So that was another kind of, before voters get to ask, why do you have a funny name? What, he was already coming out and explaining. So what else did you see that was answering those why questions?
Where he came from.
Where he came from, right. Was he born here? Where did he come from? Right. He's already answering that in a compelling narrative before anyone has to ask. The other thing, too, is the command focus of that speech really is the American dream. The YouTube, of course, skipped it. But there were some notes of service to the military from his grandfather, buying a home, the American dream. I mean, things that you would think we maybe own on the right, and watching them capitalize. And I'll tell you something I observed. I noticed under Biden and kind of during the George Floyd riots and whatnot, I saw no one was using the American flag. Just kind of went out of fashion. And once we wiped the floor with Kamala Harris, got Trump back in office, you know what the left did? They're starting to use the American flag. You go down to the No Kings protests and whatnot, they're waving the American flag because they saw the results, the consequences of that. It was voters, normal people were very turned off. Why are you not proud of our country, right? So the symbolism and things like that, we don't own that. The other side will use it too and use it to their advantage, and they'll try to use it to win. So building those coalitions, editorial page endorsements, good, but also anytime that you can have your team putting forward letters to the editor, things like that, putting forward positive things about you on social media. Nextdoor is interesting for candidates because Nextdoor is not political, but sometimes you can, well, on our side, I'm sure they'll block us if we try to do. But sometimes you can get around that. So like we had a candidate who was doing a dog adoption. He'd sponsored fees for 100 dogs to be adopted. And that's a kind of community event Nextdoor will allow, even though it's a candidate. So get real creative. Field operations, obviously door-to-door is still incredibly important. Any kind of in-person event is the way that you can reach voters. And if your preferred candidate has a booth at some kind of fair or festival or something, make sure they have a team of supporters going there as social proof, but it also helps diffuse if you do get someone who's a little aggressive or something, having that team there where that aggressive person is outnumbered. Very critical role for volunteers. Postcard campaigns, phone banking, anything that your volunteers are willing to do. All very important. Paid, if you have money, some of those options are available. If you don't have money, pick one space and own it. So that could be all the digital, the banner ads, the social media, things like that. Scheduling, we talked about this one. The one we didn't talk about is the follow-up. And then the other thing I like to say is I never like the candidate to be the bearer of bad news. So what does that look like? That looks like if I'm the body girl or the scheduler for my candidate, I go to an event with them and the little old ladies say, we'd love for you to be the ones to read the bingo numbers at next month's bingo. I want my candidate to go, wow, that sounds great. I love that. I would love nothing more than to do that, but I'm not in charge of my schedule. She'll get your card and information and follow up. And then I'm the one who says, no, sorry, he has a prior engagement. He can't do that. It's a very good strategy. So train your candidate never to be the bearer of bad news. Keeps everybody happy. Okay, so demeanor and appearance matter as candidates. So I'll talk about this both ways. So our rule of thumb is always dress one level above what you think the group is going to, how they will be presenting themselves. I will also tell you though, it is embarrassing if in my hometown of Prescott, Arizona, we host Frontier Days Parade.
Oh, yeah.
We had all the conservative candidates out in their cowboy gear. It was fantastic. And then we had this one conservative candidate in a full suit.
Oh, dear.
So you can stick out like a sore thumb both ways.
For gentlemen, it's a great idea to make sure your shoes are shined.
Shoes are shine. That's a good one. Yep. Yep.
I like suits.
Yep.
I'm dressed down today.
I
Any event where
He only puts a suit on if you have to.
Yeah.
He got a $2,000 fine for not wearing.
I'm sure we all have a lot of examples on candidates and their outfits and whatnot. Yeah, and I mean, if you're going for a farm tour, make sure you're dressing appropriately for that and whatnot. It really helps build your credibility. So the flow of the campaign, your time before the primary will look very different than after.
Kenny was even wearing a suit the other night.
I know.
All right, so we covered these things. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Could you explain Fetterman to everybody?
I don't think
everything you say makes sense, but he is absolutely in opposition to all of them, and he's elected. How did that happen?
I mean, there was a time where I think that blue dog Democrat concept was more prevalent in a lot of parts of the country.
And
I mean, he's just like the last one standing.
He's also got a lot of name rec in Pennsylvania because of lieutenant governor. And when he went against the governor at the time, he got a lot of notoriety because he fought the governor. So Fetterman's biggest thing is name rec in Pennsylvania. I have a friend of mine that worked on his detail when he was the lieutenant governor, and he tells me, he goes, his name rec is second to none in Pennsylvania.
That's why Hill is running for governor. She needs name recognition.
But I also, somewhat on the campaign, I don't know those many details, but on Fetterman, everything I saw, he ran such a much better campaign than Dr. Oz. I mean, it was just,
Oz had entitlement.
Yeah.
And Fetterman had actually built programming.
Yeah, and he knew his voters, he knew how to do that. The first ad that I saw that he did, I thought, oh shoot, Oz is in deep trouble because that is an excellent ad. So I think that was one of the keys, is he just out-campaigned his opponent, and he did a much better job.
Yes.
People felt sorry for it.
Well, maybe
I think
I
so.
stroke.
That, you know, handicapped people deserve a chance.
If that was the case, Biden would have gotten reelected.
Yeah, that's true, very true.
No, that was too high up the totem pole.
Let's try some here.
Yes.
But not like he is
interrogatives.
now, taking Trump's side on.
Oh, I know.
So I'm doing this on
My
me. Let's
thought
do it
is,
on
and
you.
this is a kind of joke, I mean, it really is a joke, but, you know, he started out very liberal and he had a stroke and now he's coming around to more safe. Is that what it takes?
Made him see the light. Oh, we could have more strokes. Huh?
That's right.
Yes, Tom.
They all need to have a stroke.
We usually have a little difficult time with candidates commencing their campaign, either announcement, preparation to an announcement,
Sure.
and confused as to when they should start.
Yes.
We have a lot of candidates that wait until January, February with a March filing date.
Okay.
They're really behind. So we also have candidates that announce in April of the year prior. When, according to what information you have, might be a great time to actually start your campaign, forming a campaign and raising money, because in Nevada you can, ahead of any announcement. But what's the later time or the first time before the filing that'd be a good idea to announce?
Yeah, I don't think that the early birds or the late birds take it on this one. Generally speaking, for most races, you know, right after Christmas, maybe that January announcement for that March filing deadline is appropriate. I would just say, you know, January, February, that's fine. Most of your voters are not paying attention at all to the election. So this is really strategy signaling between you, other people who might be jumping in your race, your opponents, things like that.
I misstated what I was looking for. Your campaign. It's your campaign. When do you start your campaign committee? Asking people to be a part of your campaign committee.
Depends on the race too.
You know, those things.
Sure.
Because if you wait until filing.
Right. No, what I and I agree with you. I think that the homework needs to be done well in advance. So if you're looking at announcing in January, February, do your homework starting back in September, October, right? Get everything lined up. Have your photos, your professional campaign photos, everything like that already lined up. Because when you launch, you want it to look like just snap your fingers, the website, everything all at the same time. And you have your supporters lined up, your campaign committee, you're ready to fundraise, all that.
Well, we're on the same pages there because I usually tell people September, no later than October.
Sure.
But if you're not ready, make it as quickly as you can to get your campaign committee together. Because we have so many candidates that decide they want to run, they don't even know who the hell they're going to have for a campaign manager or assistant. And that's detrimental.
Yeah, you really want to have your homework done already. So on the day of the launch, that's usually also when you can get some earned media. It's one of the few times in the campaign you can kind of get some earned media. And you want to be able to already be able to field those questions about the district, about the different things, right?
Jane and I have a 1-hour program every Friday. And we've offered candidates a segment of that program, which is earned.
Right? Yeah.
We're paying for it. They're not.
Thank you, Tom.
And it's very difficult to get them to call to say, I want to. We call them sometimes, we hand them cards, and they don't want, for some reason, they don't understand it. It's important to get earned media.
It is important. It's very important. I would say they're hesitant. Either A, they don't know the value of it, or B, they don't think that they will come off competent in an unscripted environment.
Yep.
It doesn't take long for them to learn how easy it is.
Well, and that's where you all can be encouraging to your preferred candidates, right? And give them this information that you heard today. Yeah.
I was just going to say that a lot of times, especially
Anytime you want, I'll come back
smaller elections, a lot of
Anytime you guys want,
decision
I'll come back on.
right before filing. The judges do that. I think some of the smaller positions do that, so they don't even know. And then they see something come on. I mean, I can't believe how many mayoral candidates we have. I didn't hear half those names. I think there's 10.
Or the incumbent congressman.
Yeah. I think that might be also part of it. So
Yes. Or sometimes, you know,
thought that they come over and go, we probably should have met with these people, but they hadn't made the decision until like the day of filing kind of thing.
sometimes you think someone else is going to step up and run, and then when you see no one is, there's no credible candidate in the race carrying the flag from your side, you decide, well, I guess it's going to be me, and you didn't have that preparation homework time to prepare for that. Well, it has been such a pleasure with you today. Yes.
Just
Oh,
a
one
question.
last question. Yes.
Do you find it that the catch up to makeup is a doable thing in a smaller race, depending on federal, state, local?
Oh, yeah.
community?
We had a woman who jumped in last minute to a soil and water board. She spent $500 on digital ads with the tagline, "Remember Ramona," and she won. And she was she was independent at the time, not of either party, and she was like one of the independents in the nation representing the largest number of constituents, something like that.
And then the second question is the system, and I say this, the success of major campaigns, congressional campaigns, without backing or knowledge of the RNCC process and such. Where does that actually play a role in local?
I don't work with a lot of federal because it's just not something I know about. But generally speaking, you know, state legislator on down, I think it's very doable to kind of put together a solid campaign. If you are running for Congress and you don't have all those boxes checked, it's probably a challenge for you. Yeah. And I don't have a good answer on that.
Yeah. Is it possible? Oh, okay. You go ahead. I'd like to make an announcement. A little.
Oh, I was just clapping for her.
This is so outstanding.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I'd just like to make a little announcement.
Can you stand up, Candy, because I can't hear you.
We have a petition to protect girls' sports. Cindy. And I have to go outside and do this, but if you have not yet signed it, please come outside and sign it. Thank you, Stephanie.
Candy, I have a question. If we signed it online, does that count, or do we need to physically sign?
Isn't she Cindy?
Physically.
Candy.
I don't know.
I think you have to. I think you have to
Sign anyway.
Is it a state or
Yes,
federal?
sign. I have it here.
Sign it again.
Well, thank you all so much for today. She'll be in the hall for you. Thank you, and you should get those surveys this afternoon or evening. Thank you again. Look forward to coming back.
And you're going to send us an email